rolling through the sand like a thought in disguise. The scarab spins truth where the cosmos collide. Energy whispers, it never says goodbye. The Beatles crawl, the Beatles rise.
Go to AmericanHealer.website now. Get the tools for health and inspiration the way God intended.
Sort of burst the chaos, yet the chaos rise. My name Beatles, Beatles, Beatles. Over and over, spinning the world in the grip of their shoulders. Beatles, Beatles, Beatles. Under and over, rolling through time till the blackness is sober. The heat fades lower, the order begins. The stillness so perfect, it hums from within. The void sings softly, entropy takes a bow. In the shadow of silence, the scarab knows how. The second law is dancing, feeding life through decay. The third law holds the promise that the stillness will stay. Beatles, 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 under and over, rolling through time till the blackness is sober.
Go to AmericanHealer.website now. Get the tools for health and inspiration the way God intended.
That is crazy. They done knocked us all the way out the mother 11 algorithm. Hey, yo. Oh, man. Kev, what we gonna do, man? Kev, we gotta build this thing up. Kev, what we gonna do, Kev? It's gonna be me and KV. We're going to build this thing up. But basically we're gonna use these times to just work on the new book series. And you know, people just catch playbacks or whatever the case may be. But we'll work on the new book series and getting out the getting everybody up to speed, because you know, I guess questions are grown. We are somewhere around book 20 something or other, right? Book 20 something or other. So we do need to and that's not even really counting the that's not even counting the main textbook. So that's what we definitely need to focus on. All right, so I think the main thing that we should probably get down pack or get recorded today, the main thing that we should probably get down pack or get recorded today is what spirituality coaching is. Now, for the people who have the books, right, people are in various stages of learning, right? People are in various stages of learning. Yeah, people in various stages of learning, meaning, this is a series of books that's somewhere, right now, I think we had 20, but this is 20 coming inside of, 100 or so, 200, on a bunch of books, where we've been constantly building one series of books after another series of books, building study, building understanding. So, I'm sure the title and the concept, people taking that, that's taking people, hitting people differently. So just for clarity, right, we want to start there with the concept of spirituality coaching, what it is and what it's not, right? Right? So quick and simple, for everything that we are doing, teaching, promoting, building, spirituality is respiration, inspiration, right? Respiration or inspiration, respiration and inspiration, all things related, right? All things related to these two terms will be a part of what we will be focusing on as spirituality, right? So that it makes makes sense what it is that we're trying to do, right? So that it makes sense what it is that we're trying to do, right? For people on the outside in, or maybe people who are confused, they don't know where to start. What should they be looking forward to? Blah, 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 right? This is where everything is focused, right? And even when we have the conversation of theology versus science, it's going to center around this nexus point here. This is the nexus point. Theology versus science, particularly biochemistry and biology, or the living sciences, right? And, some of the more ancient concepts and theological approaches to reach the same end. Or if that's not even somebody's understanding, right? We may have to have those conversations as well, which we've been having. But again, right? We're all in different spaces with it, where we at. So this is our core concept. This is where we're starting at. This is what we're building around. So when it comes to exercising is obviously going to accentuate one or both of these, right? When it comes to the diet, now your diet can accentuate or it can, it can take away from, your ability to breathe, right? Your ability to breathe, right? Let me go back to the ancestors' viewpoint. Last little bit of pomegranate juice. Throw that up in there. Throw that last little bit of pomegranate juice up in there. No, everybody should have this book by now. This is the first book. This is the textbook. This is where we left off after comedic meteorology. This is where we left off. Right? Everybody should have time to get this by now. Let me pull it up. Hold on, give me a second. Let me pull it up for you. After these messages, we're gonna take a break and go to our sponsor real quick. Yeah, we got, you know what I'm saying? We got our sponsor. We're going to our sponsor real quick.
We gained exclusive access to a club for...
You're one sentence away from...
Been through 2 divorces, still wrote 200 books and courses. Of course, it's the source of them balls getting nauseous. Goats sound flawless, more gorgeous than a brand new Porsche. Almost no resources. Pain turned feeling in the forces. Fed the community with knowledge, no endorsements. On my square cautious. Almost no resources. Been through 2 divorces and still wrote 200 books and courses. You need to refocus, recalibrate your quote. Is it if I ain't the GOAT, you don't know what the GOAT is. Drop it like Drake. No skips or bangers. Best friends become strange. No skips or bangers. No skips or bangers. Best friends become strangers.
Okay, this is a big book, so I don't actually have the whole book. I don't have the whole book queued up, like where I can pull it up and hit the share. Nasty work, I know. It's a big book though, right? Because see, even the part that I can share is 90,000 words. It's like probably like another 10,000 words maybe missing from the book. See right there, it says 90,000. That's this book. Yeah. So there's parts that here that I can find directly in the book. All right. Anyway, let's go to Eat Real Food 101. In fact, before we even get into the book, right, let's just recap a little bit of where we was at, like beginning of the year. Right. Let's recap that a little bit. Right. So where we're at, beginning of 2026, we have been watching the Trump and RFK situation, right? More so the RFK situation, but Trump, obviously put RFK into office, so Trump is forever going to be associated with and credited or discredited based on whatever RFK does. But they changed the food pyramid, right? They changed the food pyramid for the better, right? They made some changes throughout the country in terms of what food will qualify as what edible items will qualify as food and will not qualify as food. So the term "not for human consumption" has become more popular. Also, certain things are excluded from being purchased with government funds. Like you may not be able to buy your depending on where you live at, you may not be able to buy junk food or whatever with your your state aid, whatever have you. So those changes have been made. Curriculum reform is also now the next thing. Curriculum reform in terms of all schools that teach health being required to teach more nutrition, and not just to teach more about nutrition, but to change the perspective from which nutrition is taught, right? To position nutrition as a health modality, a way that you can prevent, you can fight, you can prevent, you can keep yourself healthy with, by eating particular foods, right? Food as medicine, right? So eat real food, food as medicine. We have been discussing those things for years as they've been coming down the pipe, but now it's becoming widespread. Mike Tyson became a part of the program. They ran an ad, announcing the official start and kickoff at the Super Bowl. Not many people paid attention to it. But we were tapped in the whole way. And so at the outset of that, having all those discussions, kind of some of it just trolling, right? Some of it just trolling, you know what I'm saying? Because why not, right? Some of it just pure trolling, right? Because I'm down with RFK, you know what I'm saying? So it's always good. It's always good to troll because it's always something funny, with RFK, you know what I'm saying? So, but I'm supporting RFK. A lot of Black folks are not, so there's always something there. Particularly the fat Black people. I notice mostly, not all. I'm not saying all of the Black people that are against RFK are fat, but I'm saying that there's a vast majority that I'm noticing, and it could just be me. But I'm saying there's like a lot of fat people that are really angry with RFK. So I'm like, okay, that could be like this may not have anything to do with like the Black card. That Black card is a mess. This may not be a Black card, and it could look like a Black card situation, but it may not be a Black card situation, because I'm seeing a disproportionate amount of people that are like anti-RFK are in fact people that could knock off a few calories here and there. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave it that way because I do love everybody, and as a person battling his own weight issues. I'm really making fun of myself, you know. But so anyway, this is all going on beginning of the year, and so a lot of questions, you know, are starting to come in terms of why am I supporting RFK and this and that, and you know, so some of it is fluff, but then some of the questions coming in are, what is real food? Right? What is real? Like, because the whole conversation is starting to whittle down to eat real food. They changed the food pyramid. I'm in support of the food pyramid, but of course, I'm with the plant-based people. So the plant-based people always get, you know, cranky with me. You know what I'm saying? They always get cranky with me because, you know, I'm not vegan to save the animals. I'm just saying. So, you know, that I don't necessarily share the same POV as everyone else, but they had animal products on the new food pyramid. So it's like, oh, so you saying you promoting, you know, red meat and woo woo. And like, no, I'm not. I'm just saying this new pyramid is better than the old pyramid and raises some questions, which is always good to get people to have the conversation, to get people to go down the rabbit hole, to get people to even compare the old pyramid to the new pyramid, maybe even to get more curious and try to figure out who had something to do with creating the first pyramid, why they created it. Richard Nixon, Biden, boom, 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 sugar business, fat business, salt business, you know, figuring all that out. So anything that gets a person curious to wanting to have those conversations, and if you're asking me, it's a great, you know, it's good. So for those reasons, you know, of course, I like the improvement on the food pyramid. It's an improvement. It's not perfect. It's an improvement, right? But then, you know, it's do the studies, you know, do the knowledge. So very similar to how Eat Right for Your Haplotype kind of evolved. I mean, it took more time, but in a very short time, it kind of evolved in the same way. So we wanted to kind of get that narrowed down. Really, that was the main question and topic of the book, is what real food is, right? And obviously, it's a thick book for people to it's a thick book to answer such a straightforward, simple question. And not to mention the fact that the book has now 19 offshoots or 20 offshoots that are, you know what I'm saying? So it's not only just this book, but it's 20 more, you know, so it's obviously a much more of a complex question. And then we have respiration, right? The breath, could for some people seem, you know, like its own thing, right? So then you have that part, which comes in. Real food, right? So check this out. I want y'all to pay attention to this, because this is where the information is. And for some of you, you're going to realize at this point that you learning some stuff, And some of you are going to realize, oh man, I don't know as much as I think I know. So I need to, you know what I'm saying? So either way, this will be good for you, right? Now, as you look here, right? I want to make sure that, yeah, this is just its own separate space, right? So, but for some people, as you're looking, right, one thing seemingly has nothing to do with the other, right? Especially in the spiritual sense, right? Because some people get the spirituality, right? Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, or back in the fertility clinics of Kemet on the walls where they had the potter making the baby, and the commando giving the breath of life with the ankh, right? So a vast majority of spiritual systems, the breath initiates everything from God to the new life, whatever. Boom, cool. Food. Interesting caveat, right? Because the trick thing about food is food has to sustain the system that does the breathing. Food has to sustain the system that does the breathing, and the system that does the breathing uses breathing to process food. So both of these systems are dependent on one another, and the two together produces your health and our number one target, like the focal point of our movement, which is melanin versus diabetes. Like this is literally diabetes, because it's your cellular respiration, which is where insulin and ATP and glucose and all of that's at. That's cellular respiration. So when that's going bad and that's diabetes, that's happening right there. Respiration, cellular respiration, right? Processing food. If you have a problem processing food, that's a problem with cellular respiration. That's diabetes. That's also right at the crux of this issue, right? Your cardiovascular system is where you breathe. This is also a part of this. So when you look at what all we're doing, it's very easy to just encapsulate it in one word, but it's also easy to unpack it when the concept of real food, what is real food? You know what I'm saying? Especially when we're having conversations about, I don't even know, maybe quantum chemistry. The funny thing is, there's really no agreed upon, there's no agreed upon language yet in the scientific world. So you have quantum chemistry being used a lot. Quantum biochemistry is being used a little bit, so there's really no, but anyway, but when we having a conversation, right, about diabetes, because it'd be easy for me to over scientify. I just made that right up. Yeah. But it'd be easy for me to over scientify. I just made that up. I like that word. Over scientify and sound. You just use a whole bunch of big words. You know what I'm saying? Not words that I made up, but actual, but what I'm saying is, we've been having conversations, right? And our conversations have been in the quantum space. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible, right? Because we've been talking about energy production. And anytime you have a conversation where you're talking primarily about the behavior of electrons and protons, right? Subatomic particles, that is quantum mechanics, quantum. if not quantum mechanics, it's quantum whatever, because it is subatom. So it is not physics. You're talking about subatomic particle behavior that's in some aspect of, quantum something, quantum science, right? So whether you want to call it quantum biochemistry, right? Because you're talking about biochemistry. So quantum biochemistry or whatever the case may be, but that's what you're talking about. That's what the subject matter is, right? And so anytime you're talking about taking glucose, which is a part of your normal process of cellular respiration, breaking down glucose to hydrogen, breaking down hydrogen into electrons and protons for the electron transport chain to do its thing, and recycling ATP, that's quantum science, right? So we've already been in a quantum place. That's the whole purpose of me saying all this, because we've already been discussing food from this perspective. So I'm just kind of giving you background to how we get so deep into the book series, to where we come out on the other end with our own code and this whole, this whole thing that's happened. So when the questions is adding up about what is real food, mind you, it's coming from that perspective. Like, what is real food? If we talking in the quantum space, and we've already had all of these conversations, the rest of the country is kind of like way behind. They just like, oh, there's yellow dye in the annihilators, like they, what I'm saying, which is good, but that's not, what I'm saying. So our folks, they like, yo, what's real? What's the concept of real food, right? So we're going through, a good bit of the conversation that we're having is I'm not going to say quantum, but a lot of it is in out of the quantum space, because that is what biochemistry is. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with biochemistry, is it doesn't just embrace that reality that it's you're in and out of the quantum space now. Like, that's Newton is not the primary driver. This is the laws of physics is not the primary. It's the back end now. The laws of physics is a reflection of what's going on in the quantum, right? So now the quantum has to take the primary seat. Diabetes being one of the primary drivers of pharmaceutical profit, though, that could be a conflict of interest, solving the diabetes problem. But solving the diabetes problem is a quantum problem, right? Yeah, I definitely came up with that. I definitely just came up with that. Shout out to the family, though. Yeah. Peace to the family. We're getting some folks is finding it. I got the music note next to my name, so they done reclassified my my algorithm, I guess. They done reclassified my algorithm, right? To music. But and the funny thing is, to go into the music thing for a second, to go into the music conversation for a second. The funny thing is with that, it's never not been that. Like, I just don't know what people, so that's the part that's bugging me out. I guess people weren't expecting more detail or more specific. So you know what I'm saying? But in one way, shape, form, or fashion, we've been on this music thing from the beginning, because that's literally how the body works. It's not like it's a separate thing. It's this. Music is this. Music is this, right? Music is this. When you look at look at this. This is the, like, if this don't explain to you the musical nature of the universe, like, look at this thing, look at this. This is a nucleus of an atom, right? This is a valence, and this is a valence, right? So now what happens is a photon comes in contact with an electron. This is an electron here. A photon comes in contact with an atom. That means that it's coming in contact with an electron. The electron then starts to vibrate like a guitar string. And then it re-releases another photon and relaxes itself. And that's happening literally in time intervals that's too short for humans to process. That's like more than moment to, like, we don't even have words to express how fast that's happening every second, like a zillions of times per second that's happening, right? This is the reason why there's a theory of uncertainty principle, right? Where they say, well, we can know what an electron is doing like this, but we won't know that. Or we can know this about it, but if we know this, we don't. Or you have to have a wave function, or, you know, a probability cloud. There's a reason why you can't really fully know what's happening right here. It's because the movement is faster than human senses. We can only infer. And from what we infer, a photon is absorbed by an electron, which causes the electron to start moving through the valences, right? Until that energy is dissipated and re-released as a photon. Depending on what type of photons each atom releases, you know, because it's individual and unique like a fingerprint, the vibration of that atom is unique like a fingerprint. Each light is, so you have a way of identifying every atom based on the light that it releases, right? But that's based on vibration. And so there's a question, like, if there's how it goes? If a tree falls in the woods, but nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? Right? So that's also kind of like a musical question, because music is a thing about intelligence and feeling and emotion. And, you know, sound isn't music if there's not a nervous system to absorb it and feel it that way, to interpret it that way. Remember, we don't see with our eyes or hear with our ears, right? That happens with our mind, right? With our sensory systems, right? Our observation, right? Systems, right? Our pigment systems, our electrical systems, right? That becomes a question in and of itself. So, you know, if the tree is there and there's not an ear to hear it, is there a sound? Is very much the same as if there's a bunch of sound going on. If there's a bunch of sound going on, but we can't hear it, is it music? Right? Is it music? Does it qualify as music? And so that becomes more a qualitative type of question, right? As opposed to quantitative. It's more of a qualitative kind of question. And so the way our ancestors handled it, right, which becomes the reason why you got to go back to the Kemetic Naturopathy book series, right? It's like 88 books in that book series. You got to go back and read those books. But the way our ancestors dealt with it is they dealt with it by, and this is where masonry comes in, right? But they dealt with it with geometry. That's how they handled it, right? That's how they handled it, geometry, right? To answer that question, right? If you can't hear the sound, but you know it's sound, because we know sound comes from vibration. So if you know there's sound, but you can't hear the sound, right? Is it music, right? So the answer then comes into harmony. And so you get mathematical, you get geometry, which then becomes our mathematical understandings for ratio and harmony, and how ratios and harmonies are built and put together. So now we can mathematically infer harmony, right, to a greater or lesser extent. Kylie is always arguing with somebody. But we can infer I'm saying harmony. My twins arguing. We can infer harmony from math, right? So it's not exactly the same, but scientifically, right? That's where you can get the concept of music, even in spaces or pockets where, right? Because you can't hear. You can't hear the sound of an atom absorbing photons or electrons wiggling, right? You can't hear, you know what I'm saying? But we can infer based on movement, and we know that there's always sound, generated and blah, 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 blah. When there's vibration, we know there's sound generated, regardless to whether those pressure waves are large enough to register on our system or not. Right. And then we know how pressure waves come together, right? Acoustic waves, mechanical waves, pressure waves, right? So we can infer harmony. And that's where geometry and masonry came in. And that's where, just other things veering down into theology come into the picture. Certain, temples and structures had a musical or acoustic, variance to it. So there have been studies put together by various researchers on the acoustic properties of ancient, holy sites or religious sites or churches or temples or whatever, however the videos are named. But that's what they were measuring, like reverb and echo and how, certain places, how, amplification was built into the structure for sound, and, different material that was used to build some of these places. So it's not a, it's only the people that don't know any better that would separate these things. This is where we got to get deeper into the conversation of technology coming as a part of the story of music, right? Technology, electronics, right? But so anyway, it's definitely music. It's definitely music. You know what I'm saying? So anytime you're dealing with even the basic base concept, which is what does it have to do with? Right. even with the base concept of the wave, right? Even the wave is a part of the conversation, right? Even the wave itself is a part of the conversation. Right? That's the wave, right? And name that something similar to what the music note, how the music staff thing go, something like that, right? Ain't that also the same, like half of the medical staff, the caduceus, all that, right? That's, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, but science-wise, without going, drawing all outside the lines, we just hear 180 degrees, 360, right? So the same as a circle or a square is 360 degrees. So is the wave, right? Right. So if we're talking about waves, right, we might as well get familiar with, what the wave looks like and where we see it in other places, right? Because we're talking about waves when we're talking about, sometimes it's a particle, sometimes it's a, right? Sometimes it's a particle, sometimes it's a, right? Well, when we deal with music is always like this, right? So, yeah, there's a large part of this conversation that we have to have a music friendly conversation, even if we don't know how to read and write music, or we have to have a music friendly conversation, because remember, math and music were here before. Man didn't invent math and music. We didn't invent math and music. We realized math and music. We didn't create math and music. We created like geology and hematology and anthropology and all of these different ologies and science. Like we didn't create math and music. Math and music were here, and everything associated math and music, geometry, proportion, those things already predate our consciousness or cognizance, right? So we're having these conversations about the wave. We have to, and it's almost like any other concept. You need to learn, from an unlearn and get more complex. So the simplest way is music. And that's the reason why music has such a crazy impact and effect on people, because your body is hardwired for vibration. So when you're taking in sound, you're taking in vibration. And even at the level of amino acids and protein, that's how they work. Vibration, sound. That's what's happening. Even pigment, though. Pigment is vibration, because it's usually like a photo reduction cascade, or like where the light causes the pigment to change shape. And when it changes shape, it produces like an electrical, like there's almost like a piezoelectric aspect to how certain pigments function. So when they change shape, that pressure will produce a steady electric, you know what I'm saying? So the light that causes the shape change produces an electric signal. And then depending on how many times that light hits them, that signal now can go at a frequency, you know what I'm saying? Because it's X amount of times per second or X amount of times per minute. So whatever we're dealing with waves, it's this. Right? Whenever we're dealing with, so it always is never not been this, for people that are confused. Like, it's just never not been this. Anytime you're talking about the other side of biochemistry, it's always been this. right? So we can talk about, on one side, we can talk about blood. Perfect. We can talk about blood, right? And we go, okay, well, blood has to carry food and oxygen. Great, right? Because blood is made out of primarily water, blood is moving. You have to understand the movement of blood as waves, right? Because it's a fluid. So you got to deal with the laws of, liquid and all that. Aerodynamics. But aerodynamics is mostly about water because the atmosphere is water. Anyway, so you got to look at blood, this way, right? To understand blood. But even when you get to the more finer part, like, okay, with the oxygen, it's about bringing the, electricity, the charge, the electrons, the protons, all the way scaling down from the blood to the muscles, to the mitochondria, to the, electron transport chain, right? Waves, patterns, frequencies, right? It's always going to be this. It's always going to be this. And when you're dealing with this, it's always going to be more of, so music is really just wave patterns, right? Harmonious wave patterns, right? So anytime you're dealing with anything related to harmonious wave patterns, right? Nature has already set that up for that to be music to you, right? Harmonious wave patterns. The reason why we even have a sense of music is because God or nature wanted to have that faculty in us so that we would be drawn towards harmonious waves and we would reject disharmonious waves or dissonant waves or chaotic waves, right? So we have a system set up in our body to create patterns of behavior, action, socializing, right? To where we're drawn to harmonious waves and we're repelled by chaotic, right? Our neurochemistry is based that way, right? See, and this is binary coding, just in case you're not, right? Because it's on, off. It's yes, no. It's attracted, repelled. It's one or two, right? And so your neurochemistry is based on this because the primary system driving the more complex stuff is just yes, no, right? And that's the addiction network in the brain, right? That's the reward system in the brain. That's the melanins, the neuromelanin system in the brain, right? Because that system is primarily driven by what? Dopamine. And dopamine and I think it's norepinephrine are the primary drivers of neuromelanin production, right? And neuromelanin is eumelanin coding pheomelanin. So neuromelanin is different from the melanin in your body primarily because it's a mixture of both. So when you look at a person and you see their complexion tells you what their melanin looks like, right? So the lighter they are, right, the further away from eumelanin, and then even in the world of eumelanin, because there's more than one different type of eumelanin, and then obviously activity levels and sun retention levels determine, how dark people are and all of that kind of stuff, right? But that's what you're looking at there. When you're looking at neuromelanin, it's totally different. It's both pheomelanin, which is the melanin from lighter skinned peoples, and eumelanin, which is the types of melanin from darker skinned people. It's mixed. So And your neuromelanin is mixed. And there's no real way to say that the reward system in your brain is a dopamine-based system versus saying it's a neuromelanin-based system. Period. Because it's one and the same. It's one and the same. So it's important, though, to recognize it that way, because that is where all of the disease, that's where all of the disease issues are, with the Parkinson, the Alzheimer's, the dementia, all of that is happening via problems with the neuromelanin. So obviously it's going to be a dopamine, not obviously, but I mean, these would be primary targets to look, like dopamine, norepinephrine. But if we're forgetting that the neuromelanin is an indicative factor, that bias is still be coming back to kill us in the new millennium, right? Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy. All them DVDs. That's crazy. Brother Hanif from Philly. Yeah, that's crazy. Shout out to Dean. Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah, that's wild. Brother Hanif. That's crazy. History. So anyway, but it all goes back to understanding music, and this brings us back to Kheper and the Kamenu, right? Kheper and the Kamenu. Kheper is the one that emerged from the Kamenu, but the science, and so we kind of go backwards, right? We're just working backwards. We're gonna get back to the book in a second, though, but I just want to kind of throw some ideas out there to get some outside the box, though. Outside the box. This is all outside the box. These are all, thought-provoking prods, right? But you go into that octave space, right? Right? And you get into this octave space, right? And this is where all of music theory is hidden, right? Not hidden. This is where all of music theory is. Let me not over what's his name? Jordan Maxwell. Let me not Jordan Maxwell. You know what I'm saying? But the octave is where your music stuff is at. You know what I'm saying? Cool for the music enthusiasts, right? But for, the people who like that Jordan Max, you know what I'm saying? We need a little Jordan, you know what I'm saying? We need a little Jordan Maxwell with our, you know what I'm saying? But, this is the Roman, right? This is the Roman, right? This is the Roman, right? So this goes out into the world, right? This goes out into the world. Remember, all schools come from church, right? All schools come from church. Before church, degrees was all Masonic. All schools was some sort of initiatory body, a secret society. So we just classify, just Masonic is just the easy way to understand the fraternity or sorority, that kind of culture, you know what I'm saying? Initiatory. But before the church started schools and all that, that's how you got degrees, right? So the Romans have this, right? And this is high science, just so you assuming that we have people that just, like I said, just tuning in for the first time. Shout out to Hanif. Back then, you had the trivium and the quadrivium. The trivium was elementary school, right? That's where you went through first. And if you didn't pass through there or pass with flying colors through the trivium, you never got to the quadrivium, right? But the trivium was grammar, rhetoric, and logic. So basically learning how to read, write, count, and think, and just talk and just, go back and forth. That's elementary school. That's grammar school, right? Grammar school. The concept still stuck till today. High school, though, is the quadrivium, right? So even now, still high school is 4 years. You know what I'm saying? The quadrivium, right? And that's where the higher science is. So that if you qualify from the trivium, you had good studies, now you can learn the higher sciences. And the higher sciences is arithmetic, music, astronomy, geography, all of those other things, you know what I'm saying, that would encompass the deeper aspects of geometry. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where that would be, the higher science. You know what I'm saying? So geometry could even cover all of those other things by itself or standalone as its own science amongst them, right? But so your octave is useful in all those spaces as a tool of measurement, as a working tool, right? You would use your octave. Now, the Romans got it from the Greeks, right? And the Greeks was dealing with the avdode, right? The Greeks was dealing with the avdode, and they got that from Kemet, which is the Kamenu, right? Which makes no sense if the Kamenu is like 8 magical people, right? But if you understand the concept that these are representing forces or relationships, ratios between forces, then it makes a lot more sense, right? Then it makes a lot more sense. And obviously not having the capacity to understand, you ridicule, you know what I'm saying? That's just human nature, right? So the deeper concepts here kind of get buried. This, though, is refined over and over until we get, all of our understanding of technology today. It comes out of this, right? It comes out of this because we have to understand ratio and waves and frequency, which all come from here. Before you can get into understanding electromagnetic anything. There's no electromagnetic nothing. There's no radio waves. None of that. There's no science of any of that without the basic understanding of how waves and octaves and ratio and frequency, all of those things are a part of music. So when you're having a conversation about vibes and frequency and all of that, that's a music conversation that has a theological root, origin, that comes from theology, that has made its way over into science. It's made its way over into science by refining theological concepts. Now, fast forward into, I think, 2022, 2020s. Anyway, fast forward to now. Put it like that. Just anytime now. You have QFT, right? And in QFT, they literally, it's almost like you got to be able to read another language, though, to be able to break it down. But you literally, QFT is like, you know how they take old movies They take old movies and then they digitally remaster it and re-release it. Quantum field theory is like a digitally remastered version of the Kheper, of the story, the legend, the lore, the mnemonic devices of the Kheper, right? The whole concept of the eight and the primordial, and the vibration and the pre atom, the pre atom energy, and the pre beginning. You know what I'm saying? The all of those things absolutely match quantum field theory and what the stories of the Kheper are. These, though, are the same stories, because remember, this is where we're getting what we've refined this into. So as we refine our understanding of musical relationships and sound and vibration and frequency into understanding radio waves, and now we have Wi-Fi and all this and all that, cell phones and all that. On the back end, those things are what? Subatomic particle, blah, 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 blah. That's what the quantum field theory is. That's the part that we left out on the back end. So all of this is about vibration, right? That's why you can convert mechanical waves into electromagnetic waves and electromagnetic waves back into mechanical waves. You're doing that through vibration. You're doing that through movement. Which is why we have such dynamic tissues like the nerve tissues and the nerve cells and the pigment cells. That's why we have those, literally like transformers, right? So it's never been separate, right? It's never been separate. So the whole concept, and it couldn't be made more clearer, because we do have books with God is music on the cover of the book. Not inside. Forget about how many books we got it inside the book. like we have books with God is music on the cover of the book. Just saying. Just to clarify. I don't know where y'all thought y'all was at. Just want to clarify. Right. All right. So this is what we're understanding when we're dealing with. So now to walk it back, right? So this is what we're trying to figure out, or not trying to figure out. This is what we're trying to mass implement now that we have figured it out, right? Because quantum field theory, with Kheper, all of this now, when we get past like theoretical sciences and we're talking about people's everyday life, that's what this comes down to. The war of chronic disease, right? Because the war of chronic disease is really about electron and proton wave patterns. Chronic disease is about electron and proton wave patterns. And this is just too far into the future to just like, right? But that's literally what we're talking about. And we've been like breaking it down. Like that's what we got the whole class series, melanin is anabolic, really trying to drill into people's brain. There's no such thing as burning fat. That's a lie. Everybody who says that to you is either dumb or they kind of, either they're unaware, they're ignorant. Let me not say dumb. They're unaware of that what they're saying is not true, or they are conning you. There's no such thing as burning fat, right? But there's a reason why that keeps you ignorant, because you have to understand that Okay, yeah. If once you embrace the concept that the body's electric, right? And I know we said we was gonna get back to the book. We are. We're not in a rush, right? But because it's been like incomplete, like people unwilling to kind of like go past Dr. Sebi where Dr. Sebi left off, right? But once you accept it, and Dr. Sebi didn't come up with that concept, you know what I'm saying? He just was a great progenitor of the concept. But you know, you got Robert Becker and a bunch of other folks, right? But once you accept and embrace the concept, yes, it's correct. The body's electric. You have to accept other things, right? So once you accept electricity, and electricity is the doorway to spirituality in your body. Electricity is the doorway to spirituality inside your body, right? And the reason why electricity is the doorway, because electricity is a part of the unseen world. It is actually a part of the spirit world. It is a part of the unseen world of energy, and so it literally is spirit, right? But it's something that we actually clock it in the physical world as the basis of the physical world, even though it's not a physical thing and we have no physical way to actually, like, there's no physical thing, right? Because we've created a working concept called the electron. But the electron is not a physical thing like this chair. Like the chair, like boom, it's a chair. Like, no. The electron is more like a set of understandings. And we're like, okay, so electron, you know what I'm saying? But really, it's a disturbance in the field. Or it's a standing wave, resonant frequency. Or it's a, you know, so there are prevailing concepts, but there's not like a physical thing. And then again, when you try to get to narrowing down a physical thing, you go, oh, well, there's no real way to narrow it down because we can either know this about it or we can know that about it, but we can't really know everything about it. So the easiest way to understand it is like a cloud of probabilities where it's probably like, you know what I'm saying? And listen, I'm gonna keep it 100. The easiest way for me to understand that, because that would sound like gobbledygook if I wasn't from the neighborhood. And when you was looking for one of us and you bumped into somebody's mom or somebody's girlfriend, you would get an answer like that. And so I can understand exactly what that is. Like, oh, no. Because it's going to be a group of dudes on that corner. It's going to be about 20 or 30 dudes on that corner. And yeah, he's probably right there. That. But you can't, from the distance, if you look down at that corner, you're just going to see a bunch of guys dressed the same way, like army jackets or North Face jackets or whatever. You ain't going to see nobody's faces or whatever. You're just looking at a group of guys. But it's a probability that he's probably, you know, from everything we know, he probably over there with them. Now you could go over there and ask. That may or may not work out, you can go over there and ask, and you might find the person you're looking for in that group of guys, or he might be somewhere else, right? But you can't know. You can't know, you know what I'm saying? And so that means we really don't know what an electron really is. It's just we've gotten some concrete concepts about it, and so we've locked in an understanding of it, and boom, right? But really, we're dealing with wave patterns, right? That's the most concrete thing we can understand about subatomic particles, is that we can't understand them as particles. We can only fully understand them as wave patterns, right? And so we have electricity, and then electricity gives us light. And on the other side, magnetism. right? So immediately, once I have accepted the concept that the body is electric, I have to accept the concept that the body is also luminous as well as magnetic. Now, way back in the early 2000s, when I was telling people this same thing, everybody thought I was crazy. In 2017, I got a lovely piece of evidence that I have been using to dagger people down, right? On the theology side as well as on the science side, is where you actually see a sperm, like fertilize an egg, and that egg release light at that moment, signifying that the fertilization is successful, like this egg, so there's light released from an egg when it's fertilized by sperm, right? So that boom, that right there hits in so many different, that one piece of, that's so miraculous that I don't even think people totally value that we actually as humans now in 2026 have the ability to see a sperm fertilizing an egg and light being released. Like, think about how many people lived in a world that they couldn't see that happening. Like they just didn't have that clarity, right? But anyway, 2017 got that little piece of evidence, and then 2025, right? 2025, scientists put out the first publicly accepted paper, or academia accepted, stamped, whatever paper, that cells create and sustain light patterns. And when the cell dies, like it's marked by the loss of the light that the cell creates. So 2017, 2025, we get confirmation. 2025, that was it. So we get confirmation of life and death by light in the cell. That's grand opening, grand closing here, right? And even if we didn't know about electricity or magnetism being in the tissue, but we discover light in the tissue, we know that if light's being produced in the tissue, that's only because magnetism and electricity are in the tissue. Because it is magnetism and electricity that creates light, right? Or magnetic fields and electric fields creating light, right? So we can only understand light in terms of wave patterns, magnetic field, wave patterns, right? So all of these things are wave patterns, right? And when we just group that, like our ancestors, that's just harmony, right? So in your body, that's health. In your body, that's health. And everything is moving together the way it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? When it's not, that's when you get inflammation. Right? So it's kind of always been, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of always been one and the same. But when we're learning something, right, there's multiple levels to learning something, right? But a problem is that we forget about what it is. Like, we forget about the levels. And so this goes back to the blood thing that I was saying earlier before I went down the rabbit hole. You know how I do, right? So let's say now, for instance, we can have a conversation about the breath, right? Or we can go blood, right? Or we can go iron, right? Or we can go iron, right? And we still kind of in the same pocket, right? That's the thing to remember, right? Or we can go iron, or actually before we got to iron, right? We can go pigment, right? We can go pigment, then we can go iron, right? And then from iron, we can go magnetism, right? From iron, we can go magnetism, right? And at any point, we can still be talking about the same process, right? We can be talking about the same process. We could be talking about diabetes, and we could be talking about the breath. We could be talking about diabetes and talking about how breathing impacts diabetes, right? And we can impact diabetes from a variety of standpoints, like this, for instance. Somebody can say, okay, how does the breath impact diabetes? You can go, okay, well, it's oxygen that metabolizes fat. So now you can say every single aspect of diabetes that will be impacted by obesity or fat metabolism or being overweight falls under a conversation about breath, which is one of the reasons why exercise, which is why we go through the books, we have metabolic disease training, which is one of the reasons why exercise is so efficient across so many different chronic disease metrics, because on the basic level, exercise increases how fast you're breathing, right? So it speeds up the breath, and then also it increases your VO2 max, your efficiency at how you use oxygen, right? Because your tissues are now becoming starved for it, right? Your tissues are now becoming starved for it. So there's a wide variety of conversations we can have on breath and diabetes, right? And that's from a top end standpoint, right? That's nose, lungs, blood, right? We can also take that conversation of the breath and go into mitochondria, right? Because we know every glucose has to be broke down with what, right? That carbon has to become carbon dioxide. So you have to have breath. Your respiration rate has to match the speed that you're breaking food down, right? If you're breaking food down faster than you can produce carbon dioxide, now you hypoxia, hypocapnia, or even just lactic acid, like you're getting super fatigued really fast, right? Breath, right? Blood. Now we know what the breath is carried in the blood, but we can have a conversation about blood and forget about all those things that we just talked about, even though it should be carried into the blood conversation. You get what I'm saying? If we're having a blood conversation, right? And what would a blood conversation? Maybe we talking about anemia. No, not anemia, because then anemia bringing other parts. So a blood conversation. I don't know, maybe somebody think they got tingly feet or whatever, their feet falling asleep, right? So you're having a blood conversation about blood flow, right? Blood flow conversation. And y'all are talking about blood flowing to the different areas of the body, right? Now, you can have a wide variety of conversations on blood flow. You can even then have those same conversations on blood flow and diabetes. I keep pointing right here to diabetes because it's already right here in my mind, but I didn't write it there yet. Right? Versus. Right? So you can do blood flow versus diabetes, and you can have a whole bunch of conversations just on that. But what you got to remember is the blood flow is controlling all of these other aspects. So where there is blood flow, you have good oxygen getting to the tissues, blah, blah, blah. So you have good cleaning and all this other good function. Where there's not, now you have hypocapnia and all the other things that we talked about during the breath happening because of blood flow, right? Now we can go down another level where maybe because of a dietary thing or genetic inheritance, genomics, right? We get into functional genomics. Your body's not forming pigments well. Something's up with your bile. Something's up with your what's the little thing that and they be trying to take them out of people, cutting them off. Anyway, so you might not have all your body part. Yo, I don't know who blocked you. I don't know who blocked you or what you did in the chat. You know what I'm saying? But you must have said something crazy in there. Yeah, you must have said something crazy in there. I don't know what happened. Right. But yeah, so the gallbladder, right? Gallbladder. Gallbladder, genetics, diet, hydration levels, chronic disease, all those things can impact how your body is building your pigments, right? Or even diabetes itself, right? Because glycation, right? Pigment performance, right? So you can have a problem with pigment forming or performing, forming or performing, right? And that's a wide variety of conversations. But if the pigment is performing or not performing, it doesn't matter where the blood flow goes, right? So you can have good blood flow, but if the pigment's not right, it's not going to be able to hold on to oxygen to oxygenate the tissue and blah, 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 blah. So this is another level of the same area in the body, right? So a lot of times what I'm trying to get across is we'll have one of these conversations and forget all the other ones is always attached, right? Now, maybe it's not pigment, right? Maybe it's iron. What could iron be? Genomics, right? Something in your genes, right? It could be something in your diet. It could be something disease-wise, right? Chronic disease, not just genetic, right? A lot of different things can impact your iron, but it could be dietary. You know, you could just be eating the wrong way, wrong patterns, right? Wrong waves, right? Wrong frequencies, right? So you have iron metabolism issues, right? So now, even if you have the pigment is right, your hemoglobin, right? Everything is forming right. You got good, healthy blood flow. Everything is good. Your breath, everything is good. Because you don't have the iron, it doesn't matter, right? So now if you're having an iron conversation, you can't forget that you not only need the iron, but you also need the pigment, right? And where's the pigment coming from? The pigment's coming from your amino acids, right? Some are coming from your amino acids that are non-essential, right? The stuff that builds most of the protein, most of the amino acids, non-essential aminos. But then the main star of the show is going to be the aromatic amino acids. The aromatic amino acids got to come from diet, right? So there's a contribution to building pigments that comes from non-essential amino acids and essential amino acids. You're going to need both, right? Now, blood, you're getting into hydration levels. You're getting into glycation levels if we're talking diabetes or, just other things that impact or impede the flow of blood, right? And the viscosity of blood. And then breath is another thing. Breath is the introduction of gas into liquid, right? So you have gas into liquid, and this liquid is holding solids. And it's actually those solids that are interacting the gas with the metals and all of these different things coming together to produce a wide variety of chemistry inside your blood, right? But all of those chemical reactions, when we talk about all that chemistry, remember, all that chemistry is what? A bunch of atoms doing what? Vibrating with light bouncing around on the different atoms. And the different atoms, the electrons moving and releasing light. So light is bouncing on all these atoms, and the atoms are, and it's those electrical connections that we call electron bonds between atoms that make up the compounds, molecules, and all of the matter that we know of, all of the matter that we've created, the law of physics around, the laws that Newton's laws, the items, the material that Newton's laws cover, right? That space, right? But it all starts on the vibration, the movement, harmonious or disharmonious movement, how things get along together, right? Or, break down, right? Build or destroy, right? The ability of movement to build or destroy, right? The choice, right? The choice. And, that comes from that. Okay, hold on. We're gonna get back into the book. Hold on, man. We're gonna get into the book, but we gotta take a break, man. We gotta have a word from our sponsors.
Almost no resources. Been through 2 divorces. Still wrote 200 books and courses. Of course, it's the source of them balls getting nauseous. Goats sound flawless, more gorgeous than a brand new Porsche. Almost no resources. Pain turn feeling in the forest. The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The humans. The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The human spine absorbing FM waves and all that. Radio. Stop and go, baby. Stop and go. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7365 humming through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the nervous system chains. Waves, wires, heart rhythm, brain ride waves. We're dancing and don't know how they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. On and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on. Goes on and on and on. Radio. The guy shoe is the radio. What we doing? I'ma show it. Radio waves, the shoe. Radio waves. Sun throw plasma, earth catch sound. Ionosphere vibrating all around. Lightning strike pulse through the underground. Human waves humming with a low deep sound. Scientists measure it around 8 hertz. Same zone, brain waves. And when people deeply search, meditation states, dreams, creative work. Like the planet in the mind type first. Heart got electricity stronger than the brain. Magnetic field pulsing through the chest cave. Every beat sending signals through the frame. Maybe that's why sunlight alter moves in pain. Morning light hit the retina, then the clock reset. Hormones shifting every dawn and sunset. Whole circadian rhythm blocked through electromagnetics. Like the body downloading cosmic messages. Sun talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7365 change. Why is hard rhythm brain right away? World dancing and don't know why they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. Goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. On and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on. Goes on and on and on. Radio, shoobop, shoobop. Radio. The God shoe is the radio. Radio. You and I'm showing radio wave. The shoe. Radio wave. Yeah. What if music came before human speech? What if frequencies shape what humans think? What if the heart was antenna linked and emotions change depending on the energy? Solar storm shake the magnetic field. Some people anxious, some can't sit still. Know the lights dancing while the sky get lit, like the heavens playing with electromagnetic scripts. The brain find neurons through electrical sparks. The heart keep rhythm like a bass in the dark. The sun feed life to the place from afar. So maybe your life seek double eyes with the dark. Not saying every theory fully proven exact, but the parallels wild when you study the facts. Whole universe move through vibration and math. The humans just tiny frequencies in the back. Wave is waving. It feels amazing. As amazing feels amazing. The wave is waving. Just be patient. We haven't the chase. It goes on and on and on and on. Fine is a FM station. Fine is a FM station. It goes on and on and on. The spine is a FM station.
Heartbeat.
Rain, everything close and everything synced. Invisible music and then realities. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Showing rhythm got humanity. 73765 coming through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the.
All right, so just you know how we do. We want to enjoy ourselves and do our thing, but we also want to make sure that we just stay in bounds, right? So you can just run you a little quick little check. And you'll see very simply, I didn't type in nothing crazy, right? Human spine absorb FM waves. So it's not much required for you to go down any of these rabbit holes with the information. Dean is working. Dean is with the black hand is afoot. But the human spine, right? You just haven't been you just haven't really had this discussion. You know what I'm saying? So for most of our people that have been around for a while, they know like this is not a new conversation. We've been on this for a while, but these are things that you have to bring into your conversation when you're talking about understanding the full totality of what health looks like if your spine is designed in a way where it interacts with FM radio waves, right? Because remember, radio waves are not something we invented. We didn't invent radio waves. Radio waves already are here. Radio waves are the waves that life creates, right? Life creates radio waves, right? Cells, planets, stars, you know what I'm saying? So from cells to stars, they create radio waves. So radio waves been here before people. right? We didn't create radio waves with radios. Radio is a machine that we created to allow us to, and this is the crazy thing. Give me a second. Give me a second. Let me see something. Give me a second. Give me a second. Let's go back to this. Here, go back to this. Give me a second. Let me come right back. Let me come right back. Let me do this. Y'all go back to this.
The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The human spine absorbing FM waves and all that. Radio. Stop and go, break the team down, stop and go. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7, 3, 6, 5 humming through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the nervous system chains. Haze, wires, heart rhythm, brain ride waves. We're dancing and don't know why they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. On and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on. Goes on and on and on. Radio. The guy shoe is the radio. What we doing? I'ma show it. Radio waves. The shoe. Radio waves. Sun throw plasma, earth catch sound. Ionosphere vibrating all around. Lightning strike pulse through the underground. Human waves humming with a low deep sound. Scientists measure it around 8 hertz. Same zone, brain waves. And when people deeply search, meditation states, dreams, creative work. Like the planet in the mind type first. Heart got electricity stronger than the brain. Magnetic field pulsing through the chest cage. Every beat sending signals through the frame. Maybe that's why sunlight alter moves in pain. Morning light hit the retina, then the clock reset. Hormones shifting every dawn and sunset. Whole circadian rhythm block through electromagnetics. Like the body downloading cosmic messages. Sun talking to the planet through invisible waves.
Imagine more productivity with fewer subscriptions. Google Workspace includes AI in your work apps like Gmail, Drive, and Meet. Help
while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7, 3, 6, 5 running through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the nervous system chains. Wires, heart rhythm, brain right waves. World dancing and don't know why they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. Goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. On and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on and on and on. Music is traveling waves in God form. It goes on and on. Goes on and on and on. Radio, shoobop, shoobop, radio. The guy shoe was the radio. What we doing? I'ma show it. Radio waves. The shoe. Radio waves. Yeah. What if music came before human speech? What if frequencies shape what humans think? What if the heart was antenna length and emotions change depending on the energy? Solar storm shake the magnetic field. Some people anxious, some can't sit still. Northern lights dancing while the sky get lit, like the heavens playing with electromagnetic scripts. The brain find neurons through electrical sparks. The heart keep rhythm like a bass in the dark. The sun feed life to the flakes from afar. So maybe your life seek double eyes with the dark. Not saying every theory fully proven exact, with the parallels wild when you study the facts. Whole universe move through vibration and math. The humans just tiny frequencies in the back.
Waves waiting.
What if feels amazing. As amazing feels amazing. The wave is waving. Just be patient. We haven't the chase. It goes on and on and on and on. Fine is a FM station. It's fine as a FM station. It goes on.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find this lecture that I did. That's what I'm trying to find, that I did in Nandi's. And basically it was on the periodic table. That's what I'm looking for. It's like whenever I'm not looking for these things, I can find them. They always like right in my face. When I'm looking for it, then I can't find it. But my point that I wanted to go to is this show. Like, this is, I don't know how many years ago. This is more than a decade ago. But literally my introduction into Detroit. Now I live in Detroit based on this lecture. Or what, maybe the reception that I got from it, more accurate, and some other existential, and some other existential, you know, and some other factors probably contributed as well. But yeah, I'm here now as a result, like, of this. But my first big Detroit lecture that I did by myself was to actually build a radio, right? To build a radio. And building that radio, the whole idea with building that radio was that a radio is a device to tap into radio waves and to convert those radio waves into an intelligible frequency range. Right, to convert those radio waves into something we can understand, right? And so, what I was, it was a. So I want y'all to just go back with me in time to kind of understand how we got to where we are right now, because this is very much a foundational conversation. We're talking about, like, this is a foundational conversation for the whole spirituality coaching thing. And the music and just everything, just so it all makes sense. I wanted to get into this concept. All right, my angels out there that sends me these big thick markers. We in that space again where I need my angels to send me some big thick markers. All right, so radio, right, is a device, right? It's an electric device. I want y'all to just keep all this intact, because none of this should be wasted, right? Everything I'm saying is for a reason, right? Electric device. Right? Electric device, right? And what does that electric device do? Right? Converts light and sound. Right? And basically, what I was showing, because the conversation was about the periodic table. Right? The periodic table makes everything. Right? Well, everything exists, interacts with light, and light is how we distinguish things, right? That's based on the fact that we established that the unique building blocks of matter are all distinguishable by light, right? Radio waves are light. So our Wi-Fi and all that that's working on it's all that that's working on that, right? All right. So anyway, it's very complicated and it looks like it's super crazy and all that from outside looking in, but it's really only two things that's required in a radio, right? Only two things are required in a radio. And when I say a radio, what I mean is very specifically an electric device to convert light and sound or amplify light and sound, right? Amplify and or convert. Let me just add that little. Yeah, let me just add that in there because that's needed as well, right? But the main two units, the main two items are a crystal, right? You need a crystal and you need copper. Crystal and copper. That's it. That's it. That's all you need to make a radio is a crystal and some copper. That is it, right? And so this whole evolution of these conversations from the very first book series, before these books on even on Amazon, from the very, very first books, this is the conversation, right? Because I'm showing you a few things, right? Radio waves are the dominant, wave system used for communication now, but it predates us. It's been here as a natural phenomenon, right? In order to convert them into something intelligible, right, we have created some electric devices that can convert and or amplify light or sound, right? All that's required for that to happen is crystal and copper, right? Well, it just so happens that majority of our body is made out of this type of stuff, right? This is where we get our collagen at. This is where the collagen comes in. This is where the piezoelectric comes in, right? This is where the piezoelectric comes in, right? This is where all that comes in, right? The collagen and the piezoelectric, all of that's the reason why you have tissue that is piezoelectric is because of the way it's built, right? And so that's where you get into what defines a crystal. And a crystal lattice structure is that underlying structure is what's required to give your tissues the piezoelectric aspects that it has, right? Now, copper is required in your body almost everywhere, right? It's required in the blood for all things iron, right? But it's also required in the bone for all things bone, right? So you got bone broths and all kind of bone products they selling to people and all that right now. And the bone products, some of them is good, some of them is, they scan, they hurt, they doing their thing. But primarily they only gonna focus on glycine, proline, hydroxyproline. They're gonna focus on getting those. And that's good to focus on that because it's not like, in the diet as so much, but you still have to focus on the initiators, right? That's where lysine comes in. Lysine is very important for other things. Lysine is important for your immune system because it builds structures, and lysine is important for your bones, right? So if you want strong bones, you got to get the lysine. You got to have the vitamin C. You got to have the lysine and the vitamin C, period. You got to have lysine, vitamin C. Yeah, I would say those are probably more important than the vitamin D sunlight part. Well, it can't be more important, but they work together, right? Because if you get in the sunlight, right, you still got to have the raw material for the sunlight to act on in order for you to get the benefit from being in the sun, right? As we get closer to the summertime, like it was hot yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before yesterday? All my people up here in the northeast corner of America, was it hot yesterday or the day before? The day before, right? It was the day before. So that's where it could be confusing. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not just about the sun, it's about the material. That the sun does whatever it does with, right? So like even like the most well understood process of the sunlight initiating the process of turning cholesterol into vitamin D. If you don't have the cholesterol in your skin, you don't get vitamin D from the sun. So you could, in effect, be in the sun all day. You could even get sunburned and still not get any vitamin D because maybe you're on a medication that stops your body from producing cholesterol. Cholesterol becomes vitamin D. So you have to have cholesterol in order for your body to make vitamin D, right? That's just anything. You got to always have the raw material for the whatever, the transformation to happen to, right? So in the process of vitamin D, cholesterol is the raw material. The sun is the initiator of the process, the chemical magic, the chemistry, right? And that's also a great example of light being the catalyst, you know, for chemical, you know, for that music. Okay. All right. With the weather. Yeah, I hope y'all streaming the out. I hope y'all playing that music in y'all cars, bro. That's what y'all gotta do. Y'all gotta play that music in y'all cars, man. Y'all trolling. If y'all not playing the music in y'all cars, what are y'all doing? Yeah, I gotta play that music in y'all cars. All right. So anyway, when we approach the concept and the conversation of what is real food, right? This is where we went. We went all the way to the core of what food is. Now, you know, we have evolved over the decades from a purely Dr. Sebi, you know, approach to a more melanin, Dr. Africa kind of approach, to my own unique approach to veganism. And that's what I mean. Sebi's approach to veganism, Dr. Africa's approach to veganism, then, you know, something completely contradictory to those guys, which is, so I would say my type of approach to veganism, and then a much more refined, sustained approach where the focus is not so much being vegan or not vegan. It's about making sure you're getting enough pigment and fiber in every day, right? Because I notice as the vegan markets are flooded with junk foods, and rightfully so, it's commerce, right? But vegans look indistinguishable from people on a regular standard American diet because you can do a vegan standard American diet. You can do a vegan standard American diet, right? You can have your burgers, your Franks, your apple pies. You can have all that vegan, right? And you'll still get the same heart disease, diabetes, doing the standard American diet. So it was bigger than that for us. So even before RFK had come with his thing, we had decided more than a decade ago that wasn't, you know, it wasn't just a matter of vegan versus whatever. It was something, it was, you know, way bigger than that. And so over years, all of the information that I was able to compile, it just sat right there, right? From looking at people that eat meat that are extremely high functioning, to people that eat meat that is extremely problematic. And you can tell because when you get them to come off of the meat, a lot of the problems disappear. But again, these are problems that other people that eat meat don't have. They don't exist. So that becomes a disparity in and of itself where you tell people, oh, nah, you can come off the meat, blah, 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 blah. And then you got, well, my uncle, or I've been eating meat myself for 35 years And I don't have any of those problems. So why would I stop eating meat if I don't even have those problems? You know what I'm saying? I exercise good. I do this. So instead of looking for what was wrong, I started to look for what was right. And that shift in perspective, which is, where I always come from with I'm not trying to save animals, right? I'm not, it's not about what's the best product, what's the best strategy, how to thrive as opposed to just survive, right? And in that pocket, it came down to the people who are living really long lives are people who have a lot of pigment and fiber in their diet. Then people who are not living long lives are the people that don't have a lot of pigment and fiber in their diet. Now, you can also have a lot of pigment and fiber and die early. That's why you have averages. You do populations. You don't judge a program by 1 or 2 people dying. You know what I'm saying? Like if I die tomorrow, they're like, oh, inky information. He died. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I died in my 20s. So this is all bonus. You know what I'm saying? But my point is you would measure a whole population averages on a strategy, right? And see what people, how people respond to this or that. And when you look at that, the one thing that they all have in common is high fiber, high pigment diets, period. Whether there's meat with it, the high pigment and the high fiber or not, right? The high pigment and the high fiber is the only 2 things that were there. And it stands to reason why it's a controversial concept, because it literally is at the crux of how processed food becomes processed and how Big Pharma does their thing, right? They work together, right? Because we only have one earth plant, community, whatever the plant world is called, fauna or whatever, right? We have the bioplantosphere. We have the plantosphere, whatever that is. And so Big Pharma needs to strip, chemicals out of plants for medicine purposes, right? Food industry is doing that for other purposes. They're profiteering on it. So they'll strip the plants down to take their material, but all the rest of the material is still valuable, right? So there's some portion of a plant that's going to just be sugar and flour, right? Think what I'm saying to you. There's some portion of a plant. Maybe I should write some of this down. There's some portion of a plant that's going to be valuable in a variety of ways. The way it's going to be monetized. I want to take this down. So we get the human body. All right. The human body functions to process radio waves. I want y'all to understand that. We might not have fully got to that, but we'll get to this. Anyway. Drake know about it, though. That's why Drake did his album releasing the Scene in Tower or whatever. Anyway. So the plant, right? The plant, you're going to have the flour, right? The flour and the sugar. So they're going to take the flour and the sugar from plants, and that's going to make the vast majority of processed and hyper-processed food, right? But now you still have phytochemicals. Phytochemicals, right, from the plant. Besides the material for flour and sugar, these phytochemicals can then become medicine, vitamins, antioxidants, all that kind of stuff, right? Or even like, well, that could be either side. I was going to say textiles and physical, no, but I'll leave that out, right? But you got phytochemicals, all this stuff. This is all going to be in the fiber and the pigment space, right? All these kind of nutrients. Maybe that's what I should have just put, nutrients, right? All this would be in that space, right? So all this is in plants while it's processing, right? So you're going to take out the food portions, and then you're going to take out all of these components that you can monetize in a variety of ways, right? You can monetize them in a variety of ways. All these is extracts coming out of plants, right? And then some things you have to continually extract from plants, whereas some things you can clone in a laboratory and copy, and then the price of making it can come down even cheaper when you no longer need the plants. You can, now that you synthesized it, you copy it from a plant, you can reproduce it in the lab, right? But this is how the money is generated. This is how the breakdown comes, right? So when it comes to the food, you know what I'm saying, we already were looking at it a whole different way. You know what I'm saying? Pigment and fiber. You know what I'm saying? Just also to be universally applicable. You know what I'm saying? To be able to apply what it is that we're teaching across the board. Best food for kidney health. Best food for kidney health is going to be in the kidneys book. You got to get the kidneys book. Go to Amazon and get the kidneys book. We have a book on the kidneys. And then also you want to add the kitchen chemistry books. So you want to get the kidney book, and then you want to get the kitchen chemistry books. Best food for morning salute. Shout out to my man AC. Best food for morning salute is something easy on the eyes. Yo, shout out my man AC. AC, man, you gotta make sure we getting our spins, bro. Yeah. We the teaching. I don't want y'all to be like y'all mad at the music because the music is competing with the science. The music is not competing. The reason why we haven't been live is because I've been learning. I've been in school. I've been studying. So that's been taking up my time. Plus, my children is getting bigger and their schedule is getting more complicated. You know what I'm saying? So that's been more of a thing than anything else. But the school thing is slowing down. So now we can go live. You know what I'm saying? But the music don't got nothing to do with it. But we need streams now. Now that the music is up, we need people to go on Spotify and iTunes and all that. iHeart, Instagram, TikTok. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, AC is just one of those people that know how to do certain things. I expect AC to just, you know what I'm saying, have like all the young people in Cali playing it. You know what I'm saying? I need AC to have all the young folks in Cali on it. AC, I need all the young folks in Cali on this, man. I need them on this.
We're here in Hollywood.
Okay, not on that. Not on that.
The secrets of music are God. The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The human spine absorbing FM waves and all that. Radio. Stop and go. Break the team down. Stop and go. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7, 3, 6, 5 humming through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the nervous system chains. Waves, wires, heart rhythm, brain ride waves. We're dancing and don't know how they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. It goes on and on and on and on. Rated true, rated game, rated cheat codes, rated name, rated books, rated herbs, rated research, rated words. Tired of the hate, tired of the backstabbing, tired of the brown nosing and crab grabbing, tired of the pocket watching, tired of the emotional meltdowns, tired of feeling felt down. Now this me after hating. Feeling mode activated. School of hard knocks, graduated. Feeling mode activated. Is it cash related? I'm agitated, I have to say it. The people don't care, they fascinated. Captivated. School of hard knocks, graduated. Feeling mode activated.
Now this me after hated.
Feeling mode activated. Feeling mode activated. Feeling mode activated.
Rated OG, rated price, rated nature, rated life, rated lectures, rated genius, rated pressure, rated prestigious, rated poem, Gius, rated speediest, rated tedious.
Tired of the hate, tired of the backstabbing, tired of the brown nosing and crab grabbing, tired of doing the circus with clowns, tired of the same faces from Newtown. Tell them do their homework, hate to study you like homework. Feeling mode activated. Feeling mode activated. Feeling mode. Now this me after hating. Feeling mode activated.
School of hard knocks, graduated.
Feeling mode activated. Is it cash related? I'm agitated, I have to say it. The people don't care, they fascinated. Captivated. School of hard knocks, graduated. Feeling mode activated.
Now this me after hated.
Feeling mode activated. Feeling mode activated.
Woo! Villain mode activated. Yeah, villain mode activated. Right? All right. So now, when we go back to the book, let's go back to the book. Right? We're supposed to go back to the book a long time ago. So let's go back to the book. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. We can do this. Okay, hold on. Let's go into the book. Yay. These parts are in the part that's in the part. Yeah. Remember I was saying some parts earlier is not in the book, or at least not in the part where I can share, but this is in the part where I can share. Okay, so we got this right here. Okay, so let's look here. All right, now keep in mind, this is this book here. Right, so this is the original text of the whole series, right? Okay, we're just gonna walk it down from. All right, this would be page 31 in your book. All right, so this would be page 31 in your book. Right? Eat Real Food 103, like 101, 102. This would be Eat Real Food 103. This would be on page 31. Right? Now, these lyrics right here are actually from one of the songs that's on the album. Right? And the song is 137. 137. So the song 137 is about that number, 1 over 137. Obviously, again, for the people who've been with us for a while, you're more familiar, new family. That number is the number that links energy and matter, spirit and flesh, right? Light and electrons. That's the number that's the number where the unseen world crosses over into the seen world. It's that specific number. Like there's a lot of different numbers that describe that relationship, but there's one very specific number, very specific, that speaks specifically to that moment, like literally the moment that unseen energy like comes in contact with matter of any sort. You know, that moment, that little, wherever that moment, like E.T. phone home with the top of his finger lit up, you know what I'm saying? Like that moment, right? And that number is 1 over 137. You know what I'm saying? Or, you know, in context, people would just say 137. And the people who kind of know, like that's in the loop, they will know, oh, that's the fine, the fine structure constant or whatever, or he's referring to the fine structure constant. It's a very important number in all this whole conversation we're having, right? The conversation surrounding diet, right? Because obviously that's what we're doing. We're converting the food to energy. And our chronic diseases come from the fact that we're having a problem converting the food to energy, storing that energy as, a storable form of energy, which we do, fat, or retrieving the energy back from our stored form of energy or something in that, right? That's when we get into obesity, the diabetes, and that lays the framework for the other chronic, issue, the heart disease, the cancer, and all that other stuff, right? So that relationship between energy and matter is always, there's a point in our time where theology is the only place where that's discussed, but you can't have a conversation about a healthy body without that, because every time you talk about food, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about metabolizing food, we're talking about breaking those foods down, right? The proteins we're going to reuse, right? So that's one thing. But the fats and the sugars are going to be broken all the way down to glucose. And then the glucose, we're going to break that down to electrons and protons. So we're going to break that down into energy. Electrons and protons are not anything. It's energy at that point. It's pure energy. We don't cross the line. We don't cross the 137 line, right? So the 137 number is maybe the most important number in all of known numbers in terms of science, like life, right? That could be a candidate for the most. There's a bunch of candidates for the most important number. That would be one of them, though. That would definitely be one of them, right? So we have that. Those lyrics are in the song. Hold on. Here we go.
is sometimes it's difficult as a small business being the owner and being
Once upon a time in a land called today, heard a vision with my eyes from miles away. All the people's minds were lost and forgotten. They sat on the ass and they food was pre-rotten. The doctor with gold teeth told them to breathe again, make America read again, earn they keep again. The God smile on the heart child, out of here, listen, am I rapping clear? 137 pigment created the atmosphere. Plant genetics come from the wind, that's a pun. Plant genetics come from the wind, one or none. It's fine, I'm fine, constant my state of mind. It's fine, I'm fine, constant my state of mind.
So it's fine, constant my state of mind is a play on words, because I'm saying it's fine, constant my, like define, the number is called the fine constant, right? So I'm using a play on words to describe what the name of the number is in the hook. You know what I'm saying? Because the 137 fine constant sounds too goofy. You know, it sounds too nerdy for a hook in a song. You know what I'm saying? But so we played with it a little bit. But so that's where that comes from. If you're looking for the lyrics, it comes from that song on the 137 constant. Now, interesting. These are interesting facts that I always have to mention, right? When we talk about this number here, right? Right? When we talk about this number, it's important that, at least for me anyway, look at this. Physical reality is dictated by 137. The fine structure constant dictates several crucial atomic properties. The speed of electrons. In the classic Bohr model, an electron in the lowest energy level of a hydrogen atom travels at exactly 1/137th the speed of light. Right? Now, that's important because remember, the periodic table is what builds all matter, right? And the individual building block of the periodic table itself is the first atom on the periodic table, the hydrogen atom. That's the reason why the hydrogen atom doesn't have a thing that would, a neutron. It doesn't have a neutron. It's just a proton electron. You know what I'm saying? Which for me was a contentious point in elementary school with my teachers. Anyway, I told that story 1,000 times, right? So like, how is that really an atom if it doesn't have, like a nucleus or, like a neutron? Or it's just a proton or electron. That's not really an atom. Anyway, so that's the building block for all the rest of the periodic table, right? So again, the moment that matter comes into existence, it's the 1/137, right? Now, establishing our music point, going back to our music point anyway, right? This is the lowest level in the energy valence, right? So when we're talking about the energy valence, right, we're talking about, remember, that vibrating cloud around what would be a nuclei, but in the hydrogen, there is no nuclei. So we're just talking about the vibration of that relation, that electron and that proton, that vibration is happening at that signature, right? So anyway, all of this, you know, we kind of try to make it as fun as possible, right? The books are the food, the songs are the vitamins. So you know, it's fine. Constant mind, state of mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we try to just break it up and make it easy to digest. So you come to the books, you get the, and then you get the music and the, hey! You get the whole James Brown show. Right. So anyway, page 31. Right. We still ain't read no part of the page yet. Right. Okay. So page 31. We get into page 31. Right. So here's the lyrics. Right. Here's the lyrics. You say plant genetics come from the wind. That's a pun. Plant genetics come from the wind, one of none. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Here we have this article here. Okay, and then we get down here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. We have to mention the fact that copper creates vortices in a way that gold and silver don't. While silver and gold represent wealth and preservation, copper is the workhorse that powers civilization. Copper has the second highest electrical and thermal conductivity of any metal, trailing only silver. All right, this is page 32 in the book. What is it? The bottom page of 32 going on to page 33. So if you have the book, right? You have the book. We're in this book right here, the original book. Right, we're on the bottom of page 32 going on to page 33. Right? Copper has the second highest electrical and thermal conductivity of any metal, trailing only silver. However, it is the industry standard for wiring because it is far more affordable and has a lower thermal expansion coefficient, meaning it won't burn as easily under high voltage. Copper is naturally biocidal, meaning it can kill over 99% of harmful bacteria, fungi, and viruses on its surface within 2 hours. This makes it a unique material for hospital touch surfaces and public health. Along with gold, copper is one of the few metals that can be found in nature in directly usable, unalloyed native form. This allowed humans to begin working with it over 10,000 years ago. Long before they could smelt other ores, copper and gold are the only two elemental metals that are not silvery or gray. Copper's reddish orange hue comes from its unique electronic structure. Okay, now this is where it starts getting important. Copper's reddish orange hue comes from its unique electronic structure, which causes it to absorb blue and violet light. Unlike gold, which is inert, or silver, which tarnishes black, copper develops a protective green patina called verdigris when exposed to the elements. This layer actually seals the metal, protecting it from other corrosion for centuries. In finance, copper is nicknamed Dr. Copper because its price is reliable in terms of predicting the barometer of the global economic system. When building and infrastructure projects are booming, copper prices go up. Historically, while gold was royal and silver was for merchants, copper was the metal for everyday transactions. Approximately 80% of all copper ever mined is still in use today because it is 100% recyclable without any loss of performance. Copper is a fundamental building block of life. In humans, almost all complex organisms, in humans and almost all complex organisms, copper is the clutch in our cellular engines. It is a critical component of cytochrome C oxidase, the enzyme responsible for the final stage of energy production within our mitochondria. Without copper, your cells couldn't use oxygen to create the energy needed to keep your heart beating. While humans use iron-based hemoglobin to carry oxygen, some creatures like octopuses, crabs, horseshoe crabs use copper-based hemocyanin. These animals literally have blue blood. Copper is the key catalyst for the enzyme lysyl oxidase, which cross-links collagen and elastin. This process gives your skin its elasticity and your bones and blood vessels their structural strength. A copper deficiency can lead to brittle bones and weakened arteries. Now, pause right here. We're going to stop right here for a second. We're going to stop right there for a second. Hold on. Let's go over here. Okay, now we're going to go right here and we're going to answer a very, very simple question. Okay. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Okay. So we're going to just go ask a very simple question to the AI. We're going to go to Gemini. We're going to ask Gemini a very simple question. Does copper absorb radio waves? So the answer is yes, copper absorbs radio waves. So here's the question. And this comes with another question, and it becomes a pattern of thinking, right? If natural copper, or copper in its natural form, its natural function is absorbing radio waves, when does that stop? Meaning, is the copper that's required in my body, where it's just saying the tissues, right? And notice it's pointing out specific tissues where copper is required in your body, right? It's showing you the bones and the skin, right? But those are all of the places where the piezoelectricity is happening, right? You know, your collagen, your skin, and your bones, those types of tissues. So my question is, okay, boom, once we get in our mind, like, okay, in natural form, copper is, you know, doing this radio wave thing. Okay, so does that mean in my tissues, copper is also... Now, the next question, which is the type of question that I would spend my time on, these are the types of questions I spend my time on, is if we know copper is absorbing radio waves and is capable of transferring those waves, because we know basic radio setup, what a crystal does. A crystal specifies the frequency. That's what the crystal does. So the copper is going to bring in the different radio waves. The crystal, though, is going to allow you to focus on just one signal that the copper is picking up. And then an amplifier will make it so loud that you can hear it, because a crystal and a copper is, you can make a radio out of it, but it's not loud enough for you to like listen to. You got to still connect it to some sort of amplifier for whatever you picking up to be loud enough for you to hear it with your naked ear, right? But so the copper is doing the heavy work of picking up the signals. So if it is the electric nature of the copper, right? It's electron activity. And it's in electrical tissues is where your body requires the copper. Then it's safe to say that it's possibly the reason why your body requires copper in those electrical tissues is for the electrical properties of copper, which is picking up radio waves. which is another reason why for a zillion years now, we have been discussing the universe in the sense of waves and God as music. Because you have to accept this is reality. It's just so, the only problem with what we're saying is that who's saying it, is bad enough when he only had gold teeth. But now that the glasses are gold with the gold teeth, he's clearly even dumber. Like, that's how it goes, right? If he has gold teeth in, he has to be dumb to an extent. Like, he can't be that smart. But now if the glasses match the teeth, then he's, come on. What can he know? And what can you be learning from a dummy that has on gold teeth and gold glasses? Right? So anyway, right? And it's not that this is unique or anything like that. The ability to interact with radio waves is not unique. But copper, on the other hand, does have a unique way of being able to translate So we have a whole industry created around copper, right? Multiple, zillions of industries, really. All kinds of stuff created on the back of copper. Anything electrical is, you could basically say, is created on the back of copper. Right? It's just interesting when you begin to incorporate these things inside your body and start to ask those questions, because you'll notice that in science, we know that electric fields have a very special relationship to magnetic fields, right? Electricity has a very special relationship to magnetism. So for me, right, and this is, again, just another way to start walking this down, right? Or just just getting into some rabbit holes where you can start getting some of these different ideas, right? Because again, today is just a basic class where we're just starting, a conversation around these new books, right? We haven't really had much conversation in the whole spirit code discovery and what that means for us and people, humanity going forward, and what do we really, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, both of them. Go ahead. I don't care. No, of course not. I was thinking something before. My daughter just totally distracted me. And I had a new marker.
Almost no resources. Been through 2 divorces. Still wrote 200 books and courses. Of course, it's the source of them balls getting nauseous. Goats sound flawless, more gorgeous than a brand new Porsche. Almost no resources. Pain turned feeling in the forces. Fed the community with knowledge, no endorsements. On my square cautious. Almost no resources. Been through 2 divorces and still wrote 200 books and courses. You need to refocus. gold is it? If I ain't the goat, you don't know what the goat is. Drop it like Drake. No skips or bangers. Best friends become strangers. No skips or bangers. No skips or bangers. Bro, best friends.
All right. So it stands to reason, right? Is the mic on? My mic on? My mic sounds nice. Check one. My mic. All right. So it stands to reason, right? If there's always this relationship between electric and magnetic, right? Right. Which obviously some of us from the neighborhood, we are already geared towards just having a natural interest because of some things that we may have learned in the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So as soon as we see anything associated with the piece with the magnetic, we automatically tune in a little bit more. But anyway, so you got electric, magnetic, right? Always associated with one another, right? But the funny thing about this relationship here is that there's actually only one building block, right? Because there's only one building block. There's no unit for magnet or magnetism. The unit is the electron, right? So the thing that determines magnetic properties inside of a magnetic thing is how its electrons are lined up, right? The behavior of its electrons determines its magnetism, right? And when you extrapolate that out and get to when you have an electric field moving, that creates a magnetic field, right? Or you can have a magnetic field inducing electrical movement inside of a conductor. Like for, say, going back to copper, if you put copper inside of a magnetic field, you're going to start to get, or moving magnetic field where you get some electricity moving, right? Now, whenever you got the interplay between electric fields and magnetic fields, you're also going to get light production, right? So this unit, right? This unit is responsible for these and ultimately this, right? Electricity generates magnetism. Magnetism and electricity doing their thing together generates light, which then, beautiful enough, can come back around, and one of those same conductors, right? The same type of conductor you put into the magnetic field to generate the electricity. Well, that same type of conductor can absorb the light and turn the light into electricity, right? So the electricity that starts out through this process that eventually generates light can be converted back from light into electricity via a conductor. Now, going back to our music thing, this is kind of low-hanging fruit, but we do know that conductor is a musical word. Before any of us ever learned about a conductor in electricity and magnetism, we learned about a conductor conducting music. You conduct music because you're directing the waves. The same way in electricity and magnetism, a conductor is directing and channeling the waves. So this is why the language exists, because it's the same science. It's not that the word is tricky. It's that the language exists because it's the same communication. The conductor is conducting the waves. He's conducting sound waves, acoustic waves, mechanical waves, pressure waves. That's the conductor of the orchestra. That's what he's doing. The conductor, like copper, is conducting electrical, magnetic, light, it's in another space. It's still conducting waves, though. The process is still the same thing. You see what I'm saying? So now, knowing that there's this little relationship going on between electric and magnetic, right? Which is the reason why your blood works the way your blood works, right? Because this is all the way going back to the connection of the body with the music and the health and the this and the that, right? And just giving you some of how we got here, just avenues of research and, So knowing this, right, and knowing, right, look, there's a periodic, and this is this periodic table thing. This is going back to probing, me as a kid, probing the periodic table. You find that each one, based on how the electrons, so each atom, based on its electrons, has its own unique personality, right? Meaning it behaves, it socializes with all the other atoms a certain type of way, right? And we really go into this deeper in the I have a book series called Family Chemistry book series. You know what I'm saying? It's for parents and kids to explore chemistry together. You know what I'm saying? The words are written really big in the book so the kids could read thick books and feel accomplished. Anyway, but we talk about this relationship of atoms, whatever. And so they have their unique behavior, right? So you get copper, which has the electric behavior. That's copper, right? And then you have iron, right? Iron has the magnetic behavior, right? Now, the interesting thing is two interesting things, right, about this, right? A, they meet in pigment. This is where they come together. That's our equation. We made that up. It's a hypothetical, but very accurate in terms of putting you in the right place to be able to understand what comes out of this relationship, right? You go into the blood, the pigment, respiration, inspiration, right? So that same relationship still exists. Right? And so this then becomes also a basis for plants, right? And then from that basic level, going to step up and looking at compounds and molecules. And now you start to get into categories where you have, alkaloids and saponins or this or that or the other. And that's where we go into the plant genetics book. See, the plant genetics book, we in the compound space, right? Compounds are groups of atoms, right? So you got compounds, then below compounds is atoms, then below atoms is the quantum space, right? So the plant genetics book is the relationship of the compounds to the quantum space. That's what we're talking about. We're relating all the compounds to quantum behavior, right? So you can understand how the plants, specifically in the diet, interact with your, I don't want to say with your body. I want to, in the subcellular, like inside your cells, with all of the smaller things, the organelles, and the other molecules that are present, right? How it really acts in real time Like what's really going on, right? When ATP, because I was the first person to really discover that light is being released from ATP. That's kind of our research. Now I've put people in a headlock and forced people to kind of accept it. But up until now, even still, you look at most places, it says ATP releases kinetic energy. That's not a thing. You have to pinpoint somebody to get you to pinpoint what kinetic energy, what type, what range, what type. How is that possible without the emission of light? I had to argue with professors, like get them to, you know what? You're right about that. You have something with that. You're right about that. Right? So this whole space is largely like the Wild Wild West. It's cowboy space. Right? It is very few people who's paying attention. But it's where, and this is the reason why Black folks have such health issues. Right? Because this is the unpioneered space. The unpioneered space is the space that pertains mostly to you. Because of this is the last, the pigment. The pigment is like the last world inside of the human body to really be, looked at as a valuable place to put a bunch of billions and trillions of dollars into, because that's where information comes from. You have to put billions and trillions of dollars into it. And the only way people are interested in making those investments is if something they get right out of it. So that's where the good side to big pharma is. And we don't credit big pharma with that. We only talk about the bad side of big pharma, right? The bad side of big pharma is the drugs and the this and that. But the good side of big pharma is all of this information that we use to have these conversations comes from research funded usually by big pharma. They're paying because they're investing for a flip. They don't care what got to happen. They just want to flip. They just want their money to flip. And the research is coming from the researchers and the scientists looking for ways to find those flips. Right? Looking for ways to find those flips. So they're looking for relationships between plant compounds and people so they can find something of value, something that flips. Right? But in between that is the science, and between that is the discoveries, and between that, and between the money men, the investment and the ROI, between that is the real life, right? And there is good that comes out of it because we get this information. Yeah. So you have an electric atom and a magnetic atom, right? And atoms do that. Not all, but a lot of atoms have things that they do, like selenium, right? Selenium is a natural semiconductor. So when you think about in the body, right? When you think in the body, selenium is required for a lot of antioxidant function. What's antioxidant function? Antioxidant function is not the same as, so you can have oxidation going on in your body, which is bad. You can also have inflammation, which is going on, which is bad, but they're not the same thing. Oxidation and inflammation is two different things. Now, oxidation and inflammation also are present in many cases at the same time and feed off one another, but they're not the same thing. You know what I'm saying? So it's just interesting when you find out individual qualities of atoms to trace that back to what their innate qualities. And selenium in the body, antioxidant, anti-tumor, anti-this, that, and the other, anti-cancer. But it has natural electrical properties, which make selenium used outside of the body almost exclusively for semiconductor properties, right? Which is channeling electricity, right? And so now you have to think, remember, your body's a piezoelectric system. Your body's a piezoelectric system. Most of the material in your body is piezoelectric, starting with the DNA, going all the way up to the skin and the bones. So you're putting a semiconductor in a piezoelectric system, and it's giving you a benefit. Strip everything you know of from biology and just think, if I have an electronic system that's chaotic and I put semiconductors in there and it restores harmony, what is that doing? Now, how is that happening? And then when you figure that out with that electrical, you go, oh, what is that? How does that work in a human? And then you see, boom, pigment does that. What do we have in the plants? We have a wide plethora of pigments. And the pigment is determining specific frequencies of light that the plant's interacting with, which gives plants unique nutrient profiles. Those unique nutrient profiles, I mean, we've learned some and we've captured some, right? So we have them on the website. You can go get you some of this or some of that, right? This will help out with this. This will help out with that, right? We've cataloged some in books over the years. Like, hey, Big Pharma has figured out some plants like, purple lilac or goat's root. And like, oh, wow, there's a chemical inside this plant that helps with, diabetes. So they made metformin out of it, but it comes from a plant, right? It comes from a plant. We're going to go old school real quick. We're going to go old school just to bring it back. Like full circle. We're going to go old school one time for the one time.
Inky prayer number 2. We give thanks and praise to the Most High God for the divine spark that set ourselves into perpetual motion. We give thanks for the magnetism of the Most Holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and caves. We give thanks for the ability to drink clean water every 60 minutes, flooding the river of life. We give thanks that sugar has not covered our ferries and turned them into stone. We give thanks that darkness has not covered the riverbanks with calcium and turned them into stone. We give thanks that anger and fear have not turned our almonds bitter, turning our heart to stone. We give thanks for smooth sailing upstream through the valley of death, through the superior vena cava into the right atrium. We give thanks for smooth sailing around the heart through the corona crown, joining the vortex in the right atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway to the vineyard. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate to the vineyard closes. We give thanks to the Most High God that provides the light and our breath, and the light in our breath. We give thanks for the fine olfactory system that makes our grapes ripe with light. We give thanks for the Jed Pillar that provides us with a stable fleet of ferry boats to dock in our vineyard. We give thanks for smooth sailing through the pulmonary vein into the storm of the left atrium. We give thanks for the perfect black solar repeater that induces the primary electromagnetic wave, opening the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the mouth of the Kodesh HaKodeshim closes. We give thanks to the ray wave, reflecting on the semi-lunar valves, opening a pathway into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter. We give thanks for the mechanical wave produced when the lunar gate into the holy royal arch of the Wa scepter closes. We give thanks for the magnetism of the most holy, the magnetism that repels and attracts the ferry boats of light 60,000 miles every 60 seconds throughout our vessels and our caves. Amen.
In FM waves and all that. The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The human spine absorbing FM waves and all that. Radio. Stop and go, break the beat. Now stop and go. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7, 3, 6, 5 humming through my veins.
Stop it, go let the beat drop. Joint is tough. Y'all better stop hating. Oh my goodness. All right. So where was we in the book? We were somewhere on what? Page 32, 33. We were somewhere on page 32, 33. I like that. All right. So anyway, here's where we were at in the book. And we went down that whole little rabbit hole right there. Obviously, prayer time, but with music and the whole thing. Just to show that, as we go through and we discuss copper, right? You got to take those things with you. Right? Wherever copper is, all of those things have to go with copper. Right? When we're discussing copper, every one of those magical properties that we were saying about the electricity, those goes with copper wherever copper goes. Right? In humans and almost all complex organisms, copper is the clutch in our cellular engines. It is a critical component of cytochrome C oxidase, the enzyme responsible for the final stage of energy production within your mitochondria. Without copper, your cells couldn't use oxygen to create energy. Get it? So anywhere where you have to have that electromagnetism thing going on, regardless to what it's called, regardless to how it's labeled, it's going to be copper and it's going to be iron is going to be there. So over the years, obviously, we've had ancestors that have, oh, well, you know what, man, I don't know, yellow dot. We have these plants that grows, and it's amazing for this. Now, what happens is specificity doesn't kick in, right? Because people just have plant, and like, oh, I notice when I take this plant, I drink tea from it, or I eat it, or whatever, or I make bread with it. This feeling follows. We associate the feeling with the plant. We don't realize that a feeling is zillions of different thoughts all together. That's number one, or points of contact or interest or information. Feelings is a lot. So is also on the other side, right? So we don't really have specificity because in a plant, you got a zillion different compounds and molecules in there. So you don't know if any one of them by themselves are creating the feelings, or if all of the compounds mixed together from the plant are creating the feelings that you're feeling. Later on, when specificity becomes a requirement, like now we have to know everything. Back in the days, you didn't know everything. You just needed to know, like, some plants will make you doo-doo. You don't need to know what's inside the plant that is woo-woo. It's just some plants make you doo-doo. You know what I'm saying? Some plants make you less hungry and you get a lot of energy. You know what I'm saying? So now if you got to take a long walk, boom, you take some of these with you. You're straight. You ain't got to worry about no food. You're going to be energetic your whole walk. Some plants make you horny, or they make you whatever. Like, we notice. Now we need specificity because we know there's a zillion different chemicals, compounds, phytonutrients, whatever in a plant, and we want isolation. That isolation breaks down, but these things are outside of that space. Right? These are not created or destroyed by a plant. So the properties that they bring are independent of plant because they exist in these items regardless to where they're found. So if you find copper in dandelion, it behaves like copper does. If you find copper in, I don't know, burdock root, it behaves like copper does. If you find copper in a sea moss, it behaves like copper does. It doesn't behave like the plant. It behaves like itself. Because the elements pre-exist the plants. Right? So if you find elemental copper inside a plant, it's going to behave like copper, regardless to the plant. Iron is going to behave like iron, regardless to the plant, or regardless to the animal, or whatever its surroundings. It's going to behave like itself. Right? All right. Blah, 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 blah. And then we get to melanin. Right? In biological systems, copper acts as the indispensable engine that powers the synthesis of melanin. Now, I have a bunch of people that are ahead of everybody else, or maybe I shouldn't say ahead, but they're up to date, right? Because they have the last couple of books. And in the last couple of books, we've been talking about the melanin plant, right? The melanin plant, which we're going to have some capsules. Probably today or tomorrow. The capsules will be available on the Working Tools website, right? But we've been working on that. But since people are asking me about it, and we're in the conversation, This is where we kind of introduce it in the first book, the conversation anyway, about melanin. But let me see if I can find one of the newer, or at least one of the last few books anyway, where we start to going in on this subject here. Okay, hold on. Okay, now this is one of the later books. Right, this is one of the later books where we get into, but here we get into the melanin plant. Now, I know many of y'all didn't know that this was a melanin plant. And you know why? This is a prime example. This is a prime example of what I've been saying about, hitting the Cash App, hitting the Patreon, like supporting the movement. Nobody's going to do this for us but us. So if you don't fund this work, it doesn't get funded. And if you don't fund it, not only does the work not get done, but sometimes work will be done, but you don't know work is being done for you because it's not from your point of view. It's not from your perspective. It's not explained in a way where it taps you on the shoulder. So you turn around and say, oh, let me look at that closer. You don't even realize what Chinese people see. This is a thing with the Chinese people. This is why Chinese people and white folks, they be getting into beef over black folks sometimes. Yeah. And you don't even know what's happening. You looking around like confused as hell. Like our white folks, Chinese folks arguing over you. You don't even know what's going on sometimes because you be missing the science. And sometimes because you can't relate theology to science or science to theology, you'll miss some reality. Because you can't relate science to theology or theology to science, you'll be missing out on some reality, right? And so anyway, reality is one of the most powerful plants in existence in terms of research for youth and all things anti-aging is the melanin plant, right? It's the melanin plant. And, you just don't know because you didn't break it down. You didn't get somebody to, but we get into this because it's a big part of what we're doing. Remember, we just went through the whole course, and I know we still got a few ending classes. Don't jump on me, but the melanin is anabolic course. The reason why I haven't circled back yet is because all of this stuff, I feel like we need to discuss a lot of stuff before getting to that last little, you know what I'm saying? And I want a lot of these concepts to be in the finals. Some of this stuff that I want people to be able to discuss and talk about and be knowledgeable of. So anyway, there is a such thing as the melanin plant, and we breaks it down. And we also, like I said, this will be on the website, right? But here is the breakdown to it. Is he, shu, wu. He, shu, wu, right? Here's the words, right? So you get it. He in Chinese is a surname, right? Shu means head, first, chief, or origin. Wu is black, right? So now over the years, they have just associated this to hair, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean hair. They just used it like black hair, but it also talks about chief or first person. And Wu is also referring to God. So there's a lot of different other concepts that are packed into Hishu Wu, which is the thing about having a language like even with the hieroglyphics. When you have a language that's where you're dealing with picture, there's a lot more information, and you got to grab context and find what contextually gives you the best fit. It's not like a static thing where it's this. No, it's a culturally complex thing because you're looking at which description, which definition, which parameters you can grab from the pictures that applies best to your situation. But that in and of itself is based on how you view your situation, your personal perspective. So there's a lot of a person in their own interpretation when you're dealing with pictures. But anyway, the main thing, right? The main thing besides the conjecture is that Hishu Wu works on the body's melanin system, right? It works on the melanin system. The whole entire David Sinclair, right? The guy who's everybody's watching and asking me questions about, right? Because he's talking about resveratrol and aspirin and metformin every day and reversing aging and blah blah blah. And Inky, they said they did it already. Blah 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 blah. No problem. Our ancestors, people have been saying they reverse aging since we got records of people saying they reverse aging for thousands of years. And it's always with the same materials. So if there's any truth to it, it lies in the material. So the then thing is to get to the source, right? David Sinclair is cool, but David Sinclair, when I found out about David Sinclair, and this is back. This is back in the days. This is a long time ago. When he first started publishing information, I first got onto him because I was on the Osiris. I was on the grape thing, right? So first, my aunt had cancer, right? And I didn't know much back. This is the first person I ever try to heal or help out any kind of way. She had cancer. They said she had a few weeks, to go to hospital. She didn't tell the family until it was too late. She had been getting the chemos and all that, hiding it from us, telling us she was going to get like B12 treatments or whatever. And so she come back to us when they like, yo, you got 3 months, you got about 90 days. And then that's that. And when she tell us that, I don't accept that. Everybody else kind of go into like crying mode and talking about memories and all kind of other shit. I go into my bag like, okay, yeah, let's figure that 90 days thing out. How does that work? 90 days based on what? What are the variables in that 90 days? And is it possible that I can control one or two of those variables? Like, can I grab one of them variables around the neck and choke that, strangle? Like, can I grab one of them variables? And so I came across the grape fast, the grape cure, whatever that was. And I held, I grabbed a hold to it. And after 90 days of enforcement on the grape program, my aunt was looking refreshed. She was looking rather refreshed. She was looking very undead. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, oh, yo, you did that. The grape thing is crazy, blah, blah, blah. So now I go deeper into the grapes. I find a connection with Osiris, and now it's over. It's lit. It's lit. In my mind, Osiris done led me to cure my aunt. Like even though she's not really cured, and Osiris didn't really come to me and tell me that, what I'm saying? But in my mind, but but yeah, we get a remission. You know what I'm saying? We that grape fast, we get into remission. And so I'm empowered now to continue to study, and I find some links and whatever. Anyway, some years pass by, and the first thing that pops up scientifically to validate my experience is a guy talking about resveratrol, right? And so resveratrol is in the grapes. So that's where I early on come into David Sinclair. David Sinclair is the scientist whose paper was published to talk about resveratrol, blah, 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 blah. So back in the days when you first start hearing about resveratrol, that's David Sinclair. So I get hip to him back then. And, you know, I deep dives, you know how I do. So once I deep dives in on him, I find out he going through Harvard and he's funded by Bill and Melinda Gates. So once that hits, I'm like, I start looking at him different. And then every time I see him speak publicly, he mentions he's advocating for the, you know, deregulation of pharmaceutical drugs so we could start taking more pharmaceutical drugs every day, like preventative. So he thinks people should take preventative diabetes drugs, preventative blood thinners, preventative, like all these crazy drugs, like on a regular. So I'm like, oh, I get to play with him. They're investing that bread with him because he's getting ready to quadruple how many drugs people take. Now you don't even got to be sick. If they get to pass, you know, we live in the world they would like to create. You ain't even got to have disease. You could just take everything, prevent, you know, so I see what the deal is. So I don't put any stock into, you know, what, even though there's some good research, but I, you know, the conclusions is just like, oh, okay, no. I'll see some of the findings and then go, oh, okay, let me see what conclusions I can come to with these findings. Right. So that's where we kind of get into some other pockets. But yeah, so I'm hip to David Sinclair. So way before there's the conversation about methyl markers on DNA or telomeres or any of that, you know what I'm saying? I was already hip to grapes, grape skin, yeast, blah, 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 stories coming out of Kemet with the grapes and all that. Then comes resveratrol, David Sinclair, and then that's still David Sinclair at an infant level. It's not for maybe another 10 years or so, 15 years after the resveratrol thing, maybe, yeah, about 15 years that he comes back now with the anti-aging, and he's re-examined the Horvath clock, and he's figured out whatever he's figured out, and blah, 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 and it's not telomeres, it's really this, and that, and the other. So, yeah, David Sinclair is Scammy Davis Jr. as far as I'm concerned. Just FYI, Scammy Davis Jr. Right. So anyway, right. So we talk about the plant and how the plant works in some of the books. So people are asking, you know, whatever the case may be. But we will have some on the website because, you know, there's a variety of reasons why people need plants, you know, to start taking their melanin into consideration with diet, right? On the surface level, I can say. Now, here's the thing with the hishuwu. If it's not made with black beans, there's chances that it could be toxic. So your hishuwu has to be processed with black beans in the process of making it from the plants, because the plants can be a little toxic if they don't process it with black beans. That's a whole nother story. Just know that you're supposed to be eating a lot of black beans in your diet if you're listening to me anyway. But Alzheimer's, dementia, you know, like people thinking on the surface level, like vitiligo and things like that, but that's not really it. You want to deal with your eye health, right? Your ability to see, your ability to think, right? Those things are tied to your pigment that are on a more serious scale, like losing your eyesight or your ability to think or remember, right? So for those reasons, we need to start taking care of, and that, you know, we have to have something that can kickstart that type of melanogenesis in the body. And so we have that, and it's hundreds maybe even thousands of years, depending on what you consider credible. But there's at least a minimum of hundreds of years of credible, detailed, documented information on this plant being able to kickstart melanogenesis in a way that's very important in the time period where a lot of fruit has white seeds. So, you know, the pigments in the foods have been under attack, and thus in our bodies, and just we have diseases now to depleted pigments and all of these things. So again, we're definitely going to have it on the new website today, tomorrow, something to that effect. But yeah, that's why we're bringing it into the new books, not necessarily for vitiligo or gray hair purposes, but just for those things. That's the reason why we're bringing that up. All right. So back to yeah, man, we working, right? I feel like we working. Y'all don't feel like we working? I feel like we working. I feel like we working, and I feel like I need a break. Yeah. Yeah. Not only do I feel like we working, I feel like I need a break. That was viciously cruel. I should have prepared for that.
Hidden in the hood. God hidden in the sky. God hidden in the hood, still walking through the fire. Bullets hit his chest, somehow he ain't retired. Mama found the ring in the middle of the night. Lights was about to cut off, now the whole crib right. God hidden in the hood, yeah, the block know the truth. Miracles and Jordan's revelation in the booth. Gold teeth, dark streets, heaven in the chaos. God hidden in the hood, and he never really left us. Peekaboo, God peekaboo. Hiding on the block where the reapers move. Peekaboo, still see it through, but bullets couldn't stop what the heathens do. Peekaboo, we believe in you. Mama cried Friday, cause the lease was due. Peekaboo, zzz, Pikachu. God, can I speak with you? The whole hood got a need for you. I believe it's true, so we done it. Spirit, cold, summit. Word to my stomach. I'm a KRS big punnet. Let you run it, no banks. Before that, yeah, yo, my young bucks gun it, gun it, gun it, gun it, gun it, gun it. Fly, fly, fly like Spirit, fly like Delta, fly like Delta, fly like Gucci, fly like Shelter, fly like Snoopy, fly like Groovy, fly like Movie, fly like Movie. Seen a man get hit 5 times, still breathing. Doctor said impossible, hood said God season. Grandma on the couch praying over high pressure. Next week she dancing like she never felt pressure. Cold nights, roaches, sirens, eviction papers. Still somebody feed the whole family off a prayer. Little homie caught a case, came home, changed his life. Now we teaching kids how to read instead of holding pipes. That's the mystery. World see poverty, hood see divinity. Broken buildings hiding all the hidden chemistry. Pain turned prophets, trauma made symmetry. God hidden in the hood, still walking through the fire. Bullets hit his chest, somehow he ain't retired. Mama found a ring in the middle of the night. Lights was about to cut off, now the whole crib bright. God hidden in the hood, yeah, the block know the truth. Miracles in Jordan's revelation in the booth. Gold teeth, dark streets, heaven in the chaos. God hidden in the hood, and he never really left us.
All right. So we're back. Right? Okay, so copper's role in tissue building and maintenance is centered on its status as the primary architect of the extracellular matrix, the complex scaffolding that holds the human body together. Now, this is important because remember, radio waves is constantly being absorbed by copper. And this is where we have to have these conversations about environmental cues becoming instruction, becoming information. This is why you have to have copper in these places, iron in these places where pigment is. Because in these places where delicate information is required for building and maintaining your body, you have to have clear lines of instruction. Even David Sinclair and the Harvard crew and all them, they're talking about aging as a result of information transfer is the problem, right? Being able to transfer and store information throughout different pockets of the body. That means their entire premise of anti-aging is based on wave function, right? All right. How long is this? 4 hours? 3 hours? Okay, I feel like we're reaching y'all attention span limits. Am I reaching the attention span limits of the chat? Are y'all getting sleepy? Y'all getting tired? Y'all getting tired? That's the wrong album. That's the wrong album. Y'all getting tired? Tell me if y'all getting tired. That's the wrong album. Should I have been playing this album? Should we have been playing this album?
Rolling through the sand like a thought in disguise. The scarab spins truth with. You say keep cooking. You say keep cooking. 4 hours. And I just like the terminology because it just fit the conversation. Even the word enlightenment is like not only hyper specific to what we know in terms of modern understanding of biology, but linking theology and our ancestors in the conversation to the most highest level of cellular performance is enlightenment, right? But no, here's what happens. Here's what happens. Let's go to the book and try to speed through. Let's cut through. Right? Let's cut through a little bit. So what happens in this chapter, right? So in this chapter, we start talking about the intelligent expression or the articulate expression of that information that copper's absorbing, right? Which is why you get the self-building tissues. Remember, these are self-building tissues, right? And so then we begin to get into the conversation specifically around radio, right? And so we go much deeper into the radio conversation, right? And this is in the first book, right? This is in the first book. We're going deeper into some conversations pertaining to. So all of these things are very much like when we go into certain parts of it, is definitely directly, like these things are directly from the music, or the music rather is directly from
some of these concepts.
Radio. The secrets of music are God. Radio waves. The human spine absorbing FM waves and all that. Radio. Stop and go, break the thing down, stop and go. Talking to the planet through invisible waves. Heartbeat synced up while the whole earth sways. Brain catch signals while the night sky blaze. Human rhythm got humanity phase. 7, 3, 6, 5 humming through my veins. Sunlight dripping through the nervous system chains. Hey, wires, heart rhythm, brain ride waves. We're dancing and don't know how they change. Music is traveling waves in God form. DNA singing since the day we born. Heartbeat drums, electric storms. Every living cell got a sacred song. It goes on and on and on.
Hey, I appreciate that love. Listen, I hope y'all listen. That's the purpose of having the music, because the music is fun. You can find a couple of songs that you like, and in those songs, it's going to have some other concepts to create some other conversations besides maybe going through somebody's album where you find a few songs that you like, but there's nothing really to discuss coming from those songs, but violence or sex or something to that effect. You know what I'm saying? Here you can find some songs and create some other conversations, right? Now going back to the book, page 37, which is very interesting because this is on page 30. So start with the number 37, right? Page 37, it says radios and radio technology. Copper is the essential medium that translates invisible electromagnetic waves into audible sound and data. Its prominence over silver and gold in this field is driven by a phenomenon known as the skin effect, which dictates that high-frequency radio signals travel primarily along the outer surface of a conductor rather than through its center. Because copper offers a nearly perfect balance of high surface conductivity and mechanical flexibility, it is the industry standard for constructing antennas, induction coils, and complex internal circuitry of transmitters. So antennas, induction coils, and transmitters. Listen to what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen. There's no modern technology without antennas, induction coils, and transmission, period. If you ain't got transmission, if you don't have transmitters, it's a wrap. It is a wrap. Silver, while silver is technically more conductive, the performance gain in radio applications is often negligible compared to the massive increase in cost. Beyond simple transmission, copper is vital for maintaining signal purity through radio frequency interference. Okay, so let me stop here and just say this. This is another thing that's very important when thinking about the three electrical, and theology is very important, has made sure that the importance of these guys has always translated, right? Because it's always been associated with God and the king or something like that. But silver, copper, and gold. It's just interesting that we didn't understand. The reason it made silver, copper, and gold special is because those are the three electrical elements. Silver, copper, and gold. Those are the three electrical elements. Now, what makes them even more special, or makes copper more special, is that copper builds up in the body. right? You got 3 electrical atoms: gold, silver, and copper. Silver and gold are heavy. So while your body can use them, your body will eventually cycle them out. Your body will cycle them out, right? Your body's not going to use them in the same way as it will use and stockpile copper, right? Which makes copper the most important electrical atom when looking at the periodic table, because that's the one that your body got to roll with, right? That's the one your body got to roll with. Like learning about cars is good, but the most important car you need to know about is the one that's parked in front of your house, right? Because that's the one that got to get you and your babies from A to B safely, or you back and forth to work, or whatever it is got going on. So it's cool to have the general knowledge, but you need that specific knowledge for your life, right? That's the thing with copper. So when we look at electricity, okay, cool. Silver, copper, gold, right? But when we take that abstract and make it reality, it's only copper that has the relevance, because copper is the thing that is active in your tissues, right? You have gold that's can be active in the joints, and for some immune stuff. You have silver that can do some immune stuff. Primarily, the reason why all 3 of them have immune properties is, again, their electrical nature, right? But copper is the thing that is going to be the key to your tissues, right? All the way from the DNA all the way up. Right? So, all right. Anyway, beyond simple transmission, copper is vital for maintaining signal purity through radio frequency interference shielding, because it is effectively absorbent and reflects errant electromagnetic waves. Copper is used to encase sensitive components, preventing external noise. So this is kind of like Faraday cage behavior, right? They're describing Faraday cage, being able to create protection from unwanted electromagnetic waves, right? Unwanted waves, right? All right, so then we go into nerve impulses and electron transfer and okay. Some resonance stuff from the skip over, blah, 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 radio waves. We spent a good bit of time on copper. Okay, and then we come here. The intersection of copper, phosphate groups, and magnetite within the body creates a sophisticated electromagnetic triad that functions as a sophisticated internal transceiver system. When we look at the molecular structure of our DNA cell membranes and ATP, we find the phosphate oxygen tetrahedra acting as a repeated geometric base. These oxygen clusters do not just provide chemical stability, they create a highly polarized environment that facilitates the movement of charge. Okay. All right. Some spots it's gonna get sciencey. It's gonna get sciencey, right? But what I'm talking about here is the addition of phosphorus to the duo, right? So in the same way as we have a magnetic element, right? We have an electric element. We have a luminous, a light element, right? The light element is where phosphorus comes in, right? So you get the electric, the magnetic. I don't really got space to put it in, but out of respect, we're going to throw phosphorus over here, right? We're going to throw phosphorus over here out of respect. You know what I'm saying? All right. So we're going to throw phosphorus over there on the side, just to, you know what I'm saying, throw some love, right? So that's where that guy, the light element comes in, phosphorus, right? Because when oxygen goes on to phosphorus. Phosphorus releases light, right? So you have phosphorus being the light element, right? Produces light. So now you got these three guys also interacting all throughout your body. The thing is, again, like I was saying earlier, you can't forget everything else, right? Wherever phosphorus is, it's acting how phosphorus acts. And when oxygen comes in contact with phosphorus, it releases light. Well, guess what? The human body only uses phosphorus surrounded by oxygen. That's what a phosphate is. It's a phosphorus surrounded by oxygen, right? And everywhere you find the phosphates at, you find energy being produced, which is another thing that led me to the discovery that our body is running on light as opposed to anything else, right? These guys. So this is where we start to turn the conversation. But now, obviously, you have a specific way your body dresses copper, and how the copper is dressed will determine the name. How phosphorus is dressed will determine the name. How iron is dressed will determine the name. Right? Those will determine the name, right? Yeah. So when you're talking about magnetite, right? That's iron with oxygen, right? You're talking about phosphorus. That's phosphorus with oxygen, right? Then you have a variety. You have maybe 10 to 12 different type of copper something or others. Copper somewhere with something, right? In terms of enzyme or tissue or somewhere at the foundation of something, right? All right. And so from here, we go into all right, here's this. All right, let me show you. All right. Flip to page.
These recipes all look crazy. Yeah. And I'm definitely grateful to collab with Ink. Like he's been, sort of like a silent mentor, kind of like, guiding me through a lot of these different processes and, me reaching out to him. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So that's just a testament to, a lot of information that, I gathered from him and other people.
Lamar, don't take my word for it. Stalin, Society Baby, Dead Stop, Madman, Jeremiah.
Thanks to the whole chat.
It's not just kitchen chemistry. You gotta add chemistry in the kitchen. And well cooking. Yeah. Kheper, Amber, on your speaker. Peyton, Andrew, you know the life. Kyle D, Lumpy Snipes, on Christ. Nobody else is this nice. So good it's almost a bite. So good it's almost a bite. So good it's almost a bite. I've been nice like nobody else. Right in the fear, look, Paul top shelf. It's nothing new, you can tell me. I live off love, shout out to Helvy. I believe in God, it's really natchez. 20 years later, we're fairly natchez. 100 packs popping, studying, detoxing. Live on YouTube, new books dropping. We yelling, add your game, 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 add your game. Osborne, and for Politica, Kheper, and I'm your speaker. Peyton, Andrew, you know the life. Kyle D, Lauren P. Snipes, on Christ. Nobody else is this nice. So good it's almost a vibe. So good it's almost a vibe. Z still with us. Munch still with us. Tiff still with us. Hey, this what consistency get us. The golly, I'm in Robert, Cardi, Hot One. We stylin', it feel good to see Jamal Allen. Do it, Rashawn, let me feel like LeBron. Hey, I'm telling you, chat, that's the topic. I see the life fiber optic, Lavin has got it. It's real, I give thanks for tuning in. It's soon to win. Make sure you're doing him. Oh yeah, make sure you're doing him. Make sure you're doing him. We yelling out your gang, 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 out your gang. Bars, 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 and what? Again, again, boy, again, well, I was born M4, politic, Kheper, Amber, you speaker. Peyton Andrew, you know the life. God B, Lord B Snipes, on Christ, nobody else is this nice. So good it's almost advice. So good it's almost Mark Hill and Jalen's family friends.